Howdy, howdy, fellow football fans, and welcome back to another edition of the Oneida Show, brought to you by PTE Creative. As always, I'm your host, Evan Davies, and today you have proof again that I actually do have friends. We're rejoined by our wonderful co-host, Brandon Hollings, today, as we're doing some recap of the expansion draft that we did last week on the show, and talking a little bit more of what expansion means for the NFL. So, without further ado, we got business to attend to, Brandon.
Let's get it done. Welcome, happy to be back. Thanks for having me back.
Of course.
Again, I won't tell them about the bribes you pay me to be on these shows, but
Nope.
I'm serious. Just happy to be here. Happy to have some fun conversations about how our colleagues messed up their drafts and
Oh, yeah.
why things are bad.
You're gonna Chris Sims it, right? You're gonna Chris
Of
Sims.
course, have to.
That's your
That
favorite.
means that would not be wrong. So
Well, also, I mean, I know he's your favorite pundit in the world, so
he is. Got to take Kellen Mond first overall. Gotta love it.
you're never gonna forgive him for that one, man. Like,
Can't. Look, I give the guy credit. He's willing. If he really believes that, and maybe this. I don't want to get too far off the rails out the first 30 seconds in the show.
right?
But if those are his takes and he's willing to be out there and be, kind of counterculture because it's what he's seeing, all the power to him. If that is the case, I don't know what he's seeing, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm a better analyst or understanding of the game of football than he is. He played at the NFL level, played highly successful, for the Longhorns. I don't know what to say, but I think any amateur scout could look at that and tell you that Kellen Mond was not the best quarterback. Obviously, he's done some other things that are good, but yeah, I hope I am never compared to Chris Sims ever again. So.
Well, he's one of my favorite analysts because of that. Yeah. Because if he believes something, he's just gonna say it. He's not gonna do the usual. Oh well, everyone's saying this. I should do it. I mean, he had Mond 4 that year, which that year is proven to not be great.
Yeah. You know better.
I think he had 4 because he had him. I think he had him right around Fields and was it Lance? He didn't like Lance or no. He liked Lance a little bit more than I remember, but
yeah,
I know
he
liked Lawrence and Wilson 1, 2, and he had Zach Wilson 1.
Yeah, Zach Wilson 1, correct.
And then I think he had Mac Jones 3, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it might have been Mon 3, Mac 4, but Anyway, we don't have to get too off the rails here, but we can do a different episode where we just talk about Stephen A. Smith and Chris Sims and all the great analysts we have in the world who definitely say the things they believe and don't say things to get media attention. So,
not at all whatsoever. They would never do that. They're upstanding citizens of the internet. But like I said, on today's episode, we're gonna have kind of 3 major activities. Number 1, we're gonna recap every draft for every expansion team. Brandon and I are going to give some opinions on each one. After that, actually, we can do it team by team if we're ready for it. I'll ask you in the moment, but to do a couple free agent targets, 1, 2, or 3 free agent targets per team, if we can pull it off. Obviously, Brandon and I came in prepared. Our other co-hosts, unfortunately, could not make it tonight because they have life events. So, but we'll help them out on that one. And then after that, we're going to be talking what does expansion really mean for the NFL from a player perspective, from a league perspective, and a fan perspective, if we have the time to really cover that one. So we're going to go, and you're going to get that nice AI logo again, folks, because we're going straight to teams, and we're going to start with Barcelona and the Barcelona Realeza, which is a wonderful, wonderful crown logo, if I may say so myself, because I didn't design it. I didn't design it at all. AI designed it, because unfortunately, I'm on a fucking time crunch right now. But nonetheless, alrighty, so we are here in Barcelona. First pick of the draft was Terron Armstrong for them. Or Armstead. How are you feeling about that one? My issue with that was health. That was the only reason I didn't go Armstead right away.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit. He has a phenomenal. He's above 80 pass block grade from PFF over the last few years. We talked about, again, the biggest thing for me with that pick when I was selling or buying into it, I would say, not selling it, was the leadership. And again, him watching Tua go down in a scary way, having him get up, being lost, not being to a line, and watching Armstead kind of grab him and take him off the field and being like, we're not snapping this ball. You need help. Which in the sport of football, obviously there's a lot of tough guys. There's a lot of, play through the injury, pay through the play. Maybe not as much, maybe, we've grown a little bit as a society or as the NFL has in general with the stuff with CTEs and the changes that they're trying to make to be healthier. And you would hope that with that education, it certainly seems like that Armstead was brave enough and felt secure enough in his leadership role to say, "Hey, Tua, we're not doing this. Like you
Right.
don't know where you are. We're not doing this." And so, as much as you need a rah-rah, we're going to fight guy, you also need a guy to protect your family and protect your football family and say, "We're not doing this." So, hell of a player, great at the point of attack, great pass blocker, can be tenacious in the run game. The only and that's not something I'm concerned about. Just we're talking concerns.
Yeah.
He's not asked to really do that in this Miami offense anymore. The way that they kind of play offense is pretty spread out. And we are handing the ball off. It's going to be in wide formations. We're not trying to get down in the dirt and some of the Shanahan wide zone stuff and some McVay stuff in there. So he's not really asked to get in the dirt as much anymore.
Yeah.
So that would be not necessarily a concern, but just something we haven't seen from him in a little bit. But again, I'm premium position left tackle. You're going to assume your quarterback's probably right-handed, so blind side. Great leader, consistent presence. Isn't super expensive for a left tackle at the moment. Again, probably have 2-3 more years out of high level play, and then again, you hope by that point you kind of establish new leadership and maybe he can transition to the next guy. So I had no problem with this again, especially from a personnel perspective. It's great, but also from a personality standpoint, can sort of be a temp pole for your team.
Yeah. It was certainly. It wasn't a talent perspective for me, and it was fun to see how everyone evaluated teams or evaluated their team needs. And it was fun how team needs came up as you were in the draft, where you're like, "Oh, I'm going to get this," and you're like, "Nope, I got to go pivot," and then you founded a team. I certainly had that issue in London, where I was just like, "I'm kind of just going BPA."
Yep.
What I see is BPA.
Yep.
You mentioned it right. The next 5 players that were taken for this team, and I did make the last pick for Minraj for Barcelona.
Right.
It's highlighted by Daniel Jones at number 2, but he has Ted Karras, the center, at the 3rd slot, Rob Havenstein as a right tackle, and then he went Preston Smith, and I made the Malik Hooker pick for him at safety.
Yep.
The obvious glaring thing is Daniel Jones. Your 2 biggest franchise centerpieces have major injury concerns together. That was another thing where I was like, okay, if you go Armstead, that's fine. But then you don't complement it with a young quarterback that has the benefit of the doubt of injuries or a proven veteran that doesn't have a lot of injury history, such as name a few of the guys that were in this draft.
Right.
Especially at the price tag of Daniel Jones. Now, you are our resident Giants fan and have plenty of Daniel Jones takes for everybody.
Sure.
Is this a team that could be successful with Daniel Jones and Teron Armstead together?
Well, I think if you take the rest of the package, right, you also have a center that was drafted early. Rob Harvest. Actually, I think the Rams. I don't know how much we've been following the Rams. Is the Rams have already lost 3 starting offensive linemen in this camp alone in the preseason, and they're all week to week, so they're not necessarily these short injuries. And Puka Nacua just went down as well, so I don't know if the turf there in LA is acting like the MetLife turf. Certainly injuries at other positions too for this team. I think if the goal is to be firm up front, we're playing in a vacuum, right? Which we're not.
Right.
We just discussed the injury part. I think you have 3 of your first 4 picks being offensive linemen. You can. Daniel Jones has shown success when he's had more than 0.45 seconds to get the ball off.
It's very true.
I think I mentioned this in the draft show, but the Giants last year gave up the most sacks. Second most sacks in NFL history, more than the Texans did as an expansion team.
That was brutal.
Yeah. So, again, Daniel Jones himself did not take all of those sacks because obviously he was injured very early and we played DeVito and Tyrod. But in terms of total number of sacks allowed, it is the second highest in NFL history, only behind the Eagles. I want to say it's 80 or 81 with. No, that's not right. It's
86, 87.
It's 88. Yeah, 86, 87, I'm sorry, with Randall, who was at times just running around for his life and trying to make something happen, just taking too many sacks. But I do remember that being an eye-popping stat, especially in today's modern era, because the way Cunningham's playing in the late 80s, is very different than what we're doing today. So the pressure rate was just unbelievably high. So I don't think anyone would have been successful in that situation. I would also say he has limitations. Again, going back to when he was successful, it was very much in his legs. If you go back and watch the divisional game that he won, he's carrying the ball 15, 16 times for almost 100 yards. And he was just basically, and I don't know if they watched the tape of Philly that year playing Micah Parsons, where the only game plan was make Micah Parsons wrong. and Jalen Hurts would just sit there and be like, Micah, pick some way, and I'm going to go the other way. And you watch Daniel at times either just make a decision on, okay, this defensive end is coming or this outside linebacker is coming. Again, a heavy blitz package team. And I'm just going to run to that open space. Otherwise, I'm getting the ball out in space, or I'm going to check it down to Saquon, or I'm throwing where that vacated role is. So again, identifying the blitz was important, having time for him to pick it up, and identify and get to the weakness. He can do that with time.
Yeah.
I don't know how much the neck injury, the knee injuries have taken his speed and his legs away from him, which obviously is again has to be part of his game.
Yeah.
So if that's still there, I think he can be successful. One other thing I do want to address before we move on to that is the Daniel Jones contract is at the time of signing, I'm not defending it as it was the right decision. I think the way they structured it was good. It's front loaded. There's no more guaranteed money. However, if you do what everybody think was the right decision, which I would agree with at this point, which is tag him, sign Saquon, you're in a different, healthier roster building environment, in my opinion.
Yeah.
However, at this point, after the signings, it is now the 18th most expensive quarterback contract, which is, I think, where Daniel Jones should be. I think that's a reasonable.
Yeah, middle ground is where he belongs, especially when
below middle ground. I mean, 16's middle. You're a little below the halfway point.
Yeah.
And that's where I think he should be with no guaranteed money. So I think some pushback you'll get is, the contracts, and well, it's not where it was. It's not the top 4, top 5. And I do think, to Joe Schoen's credit, he's been ahead of the market in a lot of these deals. The Dexter Lawrence contract, who, I'll fight you a little bit on Dexter Lawrence being the best defensive tackle in the league. I think there's an argument for Chris Jones. I think there's an argument for Quinnen Williams. I think Jones and Lawrence are a little ahead of Williams at this point.
I would agree fully.
But they do different things, right?
Yes.
They're asked to do different things, Lawrence and Chris Jones. But the Dexter Lawrence contract was 2 years ahead, and now he's like the 17th highest paid defensive tackle. So Shane has done a good job of getting contracts done, unlike maybe Dallas. So I don't think the contracts. I don't think the contracts as debilitating as maybe the general perception is of that deal. So there is room to make signings on that team. Again, you are so again survive, stabilize that other offensive line positions, the guards, and you can get some health out of that. I think he can be above average quarterback for you, where you can win 8, 9, 10 games in a weak division. And the other thing is he has been shown in clutch situations to be good. He is he's had 6 fourth quarter comebacks in his career already. We've seen how bad the weapons are around him.
Yeah.
Obviously we've discussed that at length, and everybody else has, but in the passing game especially, it's really just been Saquon, and that's really much been it.
Yeah.
So I think with talent, and again, without the debilitating contract, yes, but he is certainly more of a I'm going to need the players around me to elevate me than the I am going to maybe foot and mouth here a little bit, but the way that Jordan Love back half of the season elevated a bunch of no-name wide receivers through his ball. Or again, the better version of that is Patrick Mahomes just being like, give me whoever, I'll figure out 35-year-old Travis Kelce.
Yep.
I'll get the ball where it needs to be. So obviously not what you consider elite by you're elevating a bad team around you, but certainly not Justin Fields last year, Zach Wilson, I am destroying everything around me.
Right. I think what's the most interesting to me is one, the contract point that you made is so important in this. You are now, unless you have the rookie quarterback wage scale in your favor, you are going to be paying for mediocre quarterback play, especially in a 40-team league, which we'll talk about towards the end of the show. This is really going to affect the quarterback market the most, in my opinion. But what's so interesting to me is this Barcelona team that Minraj drafted would be picking 6th in the college draft. So they're already in no man's land for the quarterback play. They are... Right. And it was incredibly smart on his part to go, okay, I'm going to shore up both my tackle spots. I'm going to get a good veteran presence down the middle. And I'm just going to give Daniel Jones time. Because as much as even I've been critical of Daniel Jones, it's been fun sometimes when, for lack of a better word, when you're in your feelings during the season. Sure. Especially last year.
Don't know what that's like.
Yeah. Where I've had to be the voice of reason, and even you were like, sure. Are you kidding me? Daniel Jones is that high? I'm like, well, Brandon, look at the rest of the league's roster as a quarterback, and you're like, oh. Okay. Like, when he has his legs, he is an effective player. Is he a world changer? No, not in my opinion. But is he an effective player that can distribute the ball to effective playmakers? Yes. So this is a team that I think could be successful, especially if you have a average quarterback salary that's not even guaranteed. Now, if you're in this situation, you're probably going to have to sign Daniel Jones to a little sweetener and say, "Hey,
Sure.
you're coming overseas. We want a leader we want a leader of our team. You're our guy," kind of situation. It's certainly something to be interested in to see how that could happen. I just find it
Yeah.
even more fascinating. They would be exactly where New York was this year, where they're at
Yep.
6, they're in no man's land, and they have Daniel Jones again in the 6-man spot, going like, do we keep him? Do we run with him, or do we find a young guy and just run with Daniel until the young guy's ready, kind of situation?
Right.
Because one thing I would say about all these teams, if you're in the spot, unless you're number one overall pick and you know that guy is gonna be the guy, unless you have Andrew Luck, the Trevor Lawrences that you know are gonna start day one,
Right.
I don't think anybody on these teams should be starting a rookie quarterback for at least a year or two.
Yeah. Even
Sim-
even Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, simply from an investment standpoint. The
Yeah.
Mahomes thing is perfect. They had
Yeah.
Alex Smith. They could have played Patrick Mahomes. You get reports now, especially where the guys that were on that team, they showed up to practice day one with Mahomes, and they were like, "We knew he was different. He was
Yep.
raw, but we knew he was different." And they still, Andy and team over in Kansas City was smart enough to go, "We need to protect our investment," and we have Alex, so we don't need to rush Patrick out there. So this is a situation where I think it's kind of perfect for Daniel Jones once again to run around. Plus, I mean, you do have a defensive captain in Preston
Yep.
Smith here. He has help, and Malik Hooker, for all his flaws, is a stable presence in your defensive
Yeah.
backfield as well. So
For sure.
it's not a bad team to have. Now, is there a free agent or two that you think this team could really benefit from trying to track down?
Yeah, I mean, I think again we talked a little bit about the offensive line play, and I know this doesn't always work that way, but I think a Cam Robinson signing, he's going to be under 30 when you pick him up from Jacksonville. I think he's a little bit underrated. I liked him coming out more than most, so again, I have a little bit more biases from there, but I don't think that. I think again, he's got good footwork, good punch. He's gotten better with the inside moves. His pass block rate, has gone up every year. He's been above 80 in a run block grade again. And, PFF is PFF. I find their data points to be good. I really started using their stuff for NFL draft scouting, and I was able to find some good articles that actually do accurately kind of represent WAR 3 years out. And
Sure.
it's something to look at. Wins above replacement was more about specific stats to do well, and obviously how they kind of calculate those numbers. So again, for people that don't know what I'm talking about, that's where I'm getting these numbers from. Run block is good. Travis Etienne has been successful behind running off his side. I'm not going to sit here and pretend he's a perfect tackle, but again, maybe you don't have to play him at hard spots here still. And even moving more towards that, I just don't know what I'm going to get at Zach Martin at 35.
Yep.
I mean, he's probably the best guard of this generation. He is just a stalwart. He's great in space. He's a good anchor. He's played some center when he's had to and been an all-pro level with that. Obviously much younger, but was the reason that Dallas offense was the elite rushing attack it was in those 2016, 2017s all the way through 2020 eras.
Yeah.
He's still, again, at this point, still great. So again, just continuing to shore up some of that offensive line play. I don't love Garrett Bowles. I know he's available, and obviously Taylor Decker's already been re-signed.
Right.
So I don't think that's anybody that I would be super excited about. But again, I tend to focus again specifically because you have Daniel Jones and you need that elite, not elite, but above average offensive line play. Those are two where I was like, this makes a lot of sense for them. Again, probably my number one target would be Cam, again, because you're under 30. Not that you're going to necessarily learn a bunch of new tricks at 29, but somebody who still maybe is not so set in their ways that you can get something out of them. And again, similar to what it looks like the Giants are going to have to do with Evan Neal at this point, slide him into guard, play him in a phone booth where he's not going to be on an island, and can be successful as a big, powerful inside kind of player.
Right. I think the scary format is old Cam Robinson, that kind of unfortunately, to some people's eyes, flames out because he wasn't the tackle that like it. It's
Right.
weird how when tackles don't succeed immediately or do not flourish within 2 years, immediately everyone's just like they're not good. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that's not how football works. Especially
Correct.
tackle, like tackle, guard, tight end. It's all three on those ends of the lines. They usually take 2 to 3 years to maturate to where they really do make a
Yeah.
difference. And
Yep.
I think a Cam Robinson signing here would be really smart on their part because I think you could slide him into guard, or
Yeah.
with Havenstein getting a little bit older and Armstead getting a little bit older, you could think about, hey, maybe we can get an extra year or two out of him by sliding him inside
That's a great call. Yeah.
and putting Robinson on the outside, and then worst comes to worst, we're not. Or if you do have those big concerns like I would have with Armstead, you could go, hey, we got another guy who can play tackle. We know we have a tackle, but we can use him at guard if
Right.
Tehran's healthy. So,
Right.
and I mean, that's a middle of the road signing. I don't think Cam Robinson dictates starter level, like top of the market left tackle money either. So
No. No.
I would agree with that. I'll take a pick
I
out
think
of.
he's a starter. I would push back a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I don't think he's a high-end starter. I don't think he's, Penny Sewell by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, no.
But even Sewell struggled a little bit. And again, just being the Giant, I remember the hate that Andrew Thomas was getting his
Yep.
first 2 years, and then really again got comfortable in the NFL, and he's been a great left. I would say top 7 or 8 left tackle when healthy. Again, he's had some knee stuff with that nasty MetLife field, but has been when he's on the field a top 5 to 8 tackle in the league. And again, it's a different show. And people watch Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and some of these guys at other positions come out and just dominate. And they expect every position to be able to do it. And it just doesn't work that way. There are different adjustment times to different positions. Obviously, the running back basically being the easiest. And obviously, I think quarterback's probably the hardest. But I would say exactly to your point, offensive line play and tight end is probably the biggest acclamation.
Absolutely, and I did misspeak a little bit there. Like he's definitely a middle of the road to above average starting left tackle.
Sure.
But he's not going to demand top of the market money, which is a really nice pickup. The other thing I would we don't have to go deep into this, but I thought this would be a fun bone for you to chew on. I'm a huge fan of if you have a transition, if there's someone on the market that your major piece of transition is your plan. If Daniel Jones is your plan, Darius Slayton's on this free agency. Is he a number one receiver? No. But can Slayton make a play from time or two and start your receiver core with at least something functional? And then at pick 6 you can probably go, because you already have left tackle. You already have your tackles. You do have a starting defensive end. You can maybe go, unless there's a generational pass rusher or a really high-end pass rusher there, you can say, hey, fuck it. We're going to take a number one receiver. We have Slayton to be our 2-3. Let's get in the mix there. That's a functional way to at least try to score points in a European division that's down.
I think it's good. And the Giants, unintentionally or otherwise, have certainly believed that Darius Slayton's a 1. And I will say, for as much hate as we give Big Dave, that 5th-round pick of Darius Slayton has been a godsend and a lifeboat for Daniel Jones at times, who just a guy who can win with speed still. Was always a quick guy at Auburn, but has become a much savvier route runner. I do think, at least, and I don't want to get too far into this, like you said, because I know we're not trying to go 3 hours this time around, but that role, at least from what I've seen in camp and the work, Jalen Hyatt's going to take that role. Who is a faster, bigger, more explosive, I think, version of Darius Slayton. Sure. And obviously the way Malik Neighbors has played. So again, I'm projecting out as I think the Giants would be comfortable with that if that's where we're at. With the starting lineup being, and I think it's going to be their lineup this year, as being Neighbors is the wide receiver 1, Hyatt at the 2, Wande on the slot, and then Bellinger. Obviously, and I've heard 6'2", 260 running 4 high 4.5s.
Yeah.
They want to be involved in the passing game, and I know Waller was not the player they thought he was, but I know they want a receiving threat at tight end. So. I think even the loss, again, I'm looking more towards the Giants, but Daniel Jones obviously has the connection with him. Daniel Jones can throw a good, 20-yard, 19-plus yard pass. He does have a above league average deep throw rate, or I'm sorry, deep passing grade from PFF.
He does.
Again, that doesn't happen a lot because he gets destroyed all the time. But when given time, when he has time to throw the ball 19-plus yards down the field, he's above league average. So that's a great thought.
Alrighty, well, I think that wraps up Barcelona pretty well. We move in here, and we are going over to Birmingham with the Birmingham Dragons in the UK for our
Worst
first
team.
UK. Worst.
That guy. I don't know who drafted that team, but it sucks.
No sibling hate whatsoever.
No, not at all.
So I'm gonna just go through all 6 players quick, and then
Yep.
we'll talk because we obviously know what the talking point's gonna be here. Number 1
Yep.
pick was Kyle Pitts at the tight end position.
Yeah.
Then you had Trevor Penning, offensive tackle. Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver. Tyrod Taylor would be your starting quarterback at this point in time, although they do have a top 3 pick in the upcoming 25 NFL draft. Then you have Bud Dupree at your outside linebacker spot, and Sheldon Rankins at defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Obviously, Kyle Pitts is the star here. That is your best pickup. Plus, he's playing in the UK, so he will be able to score touchdowns.
Yes. Important thought process. I'm sure Derek thought about when he drafted him.
Obviously, he can play. He can play overseas, so that's why you got to get him overseas. Yeah. Is it wrong to think, outside of Kyle Pitts, the safest pick on this team is Tyrod Taylor?
Yes, I think that is probably the correct answer. It really depends on what you're asking. I would say Bud Dupree to do and Trevor Penning to do.
Right.
If you're drafting Penning to be the top, and Derek addresses when he came in. If you're drafting to be a top 20 player at right tackle, I don't think Penning can do that. He's shown that the thing that made him a great small school player, which the size is obviously still there, but the aggression.
Yeah.
He loves to extend with 2 hands, and he just gets chopped. I mean, the hands get chopped away, and he has no answer. He also has no answer for a good inside spin move. So you can just see that on film that he struggles with that, with speed, and when someone's able to just change up their cadence a little bit in terms of if you have a couple different pass rush moves, he really struggles with that.
Sure.
Again, I think if you ask him to play in a phone booth, and again by that I've said that a couple times, but just playing next to the center and playing to a tackle on your other side, and you're only responsible for a much smaller space, aka phone booth. That nastiness becomes a lot more effective playing bigger defensive tackles. So you just need to get your hands on, and maybe don't have that quickness. So if you're asking him to play inside, I feel solid about that. Bud Dupree is not a double-digit sack player.
No.
I just don't think he is. Again, I said this also when you drafted him. I think he is a good, not great, but good, maybe better than good stack and shed player. Where like hold the edge, like hit the tackle. Okay, your job is to hit this tackle and force the run inside. Like don't let the running back out the gate out the backside. Keep it inside. Don't let the tackle move you. I think he can do that, and he's shown the ability to do that, and also occasionally shed that tackle and make a play in the hole. If that's what your plan is for him, I feel pretty good about that too. But in terms of a stabilizing, we're going to get 15 points a game in the non-expansion league, maybe an extra 3 in a league where we're going to play some more expansion teams. Someone will take care of the ball who can still move with his feet a little bit, pick up some easy first downs on scrambles. Tyrod's been that for a while. We also said jokingly he suffers only hilariously horrific injuries that no one else will, which almost then crowns the passing of the torch to an elite quarterback. So again, Derek's kind of securing his quarterback's future by making sure he does have Tyrod in that play. And again, didn't want to completely not mention Wan'Dale. I think is just unproven. I think he's just a gadget guy that can put the ball in his hands, and he's got great explosiveness and quickness. Maybe he picks up a couple free yards, and then Rankins was just the best tackle left. But tried to kind of hit everybody there. But I think you're right in terms of being the stabilizing force. And I think maybe you change positions on a couple guys, or ask if you're a good coach and you know what your players are capable of, and you ask the right things of them. I would argue that you could get, for example, a more statistically productive season if you were looking at like run defense grades or run stops. Or low tackles. But in terms of like stabilizing the most important position, I think Tyrod, was the right answer.
Well, I certainly think one thing that we found when we were doing this was we wanted stability. And Tyrod brings that. And especially one thing that cannot be argued that has kept Tyrod in the lead as long as he has been is when he can distribute the ball, he focuses on the people that need the ball.
Yeah.
He does what you're supposed to do. He gets the ball to the back on a check down, and he gets to most reliable targets that he can find. He's not the guy that's just gonna maddeningly just chuck it to somebody that you're just like it wouldn't be Atlanta all over again for Kyle Pitts just going like, why can't he get a fucking target?
Right.
How many games I mean, how many games are you
getting
getting?
targets? They were just 15 feet over his head.
Well, that's why Desmond Ritter was never picked in this way. But even though he'd be available for pickup, it's just it would be a crying shame to not have a presence to feed that. And I think with a Pitts and a Wan'Dale with Tyrod, you'd be able to at least see guys get targets that can at least function. And Tyrod, even in his later 30s, still has mobility at this point to do something. So, I think Penning's your big wild card.
Yeah.
Dupree I don't think is a wild card. I think it's just managing expectations.
Yes. I think that's a great way to phrase that.
Because if you're going, Dupree is just going to magically get you 12 sacks because he's Bud Dupree. That's fucking stupid at this point in his career.
Right.
And he wasn't really ever that guy to begin with. He was never like the major impact player. He played alongside impact players.
Yeah.
And that's what got him there. But there's a reason guys like Dupree go to teams that are coached by the Tomlins and the Harbaughs. And he strikes me as almost as a Belichick player. He does his job and he gets to play because he does his goddamn job well.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I think that's very succinct and a good point. And again, I would say, if you go back to the 2015, Tyrod Bills, there's some plays there when he dragged them to 9-7 playoffs where he is clearly, that's where I thought he was going to be something. He got paid after that season, but clearly was never the Michael Vick kind of answer to the athleticism. But the only other thing I would add is I can move on is that. Playing for the Giants this year, not only is he mobile, he's willing to be mobile and take a hit, which I don't love, but if you're looking for again lightning rod plays to get your team excited, is certainly willing to do that, run hard, make a play. Again, to a fault maybe sometimes, where he cost the Giants some end of half decision making things, but at that age you'd hope he's not doing that. But again, willing to put his body on the line to get some stuff done. So again, I think we. We like that. We like that and again, I think young guys are new. But overall, again, I think you did a nice job kind of surmising what Tyrod is to this team.
Yeah. Free agent target for Birmingham. I'm looking and I just go, they don't have a real unit. They have more of an offense, obviously, than a defense, simply by numbers. And you could say that's the start of an offensive unit.
Sure.
But defense, you kind of have a no-name identity. You don't Rankins is a rotational player at this point in his career, or at least he's a functioning starter.
Right.
Dupree is again a functioning starter at 32 at this time. I don't even know where to go for a target for them because, I mean, I guess one would be, do you want to go defensive backfield because you got nothing there, but at least you have three levels of your defense. You're starting with something. I could see them going for a Charvarius Ward at corner. That at least it's a stable player who does have some playmaking ability with him. He does have some stability on the island. And he's proven that in two different places in two different schemes. So is Charvarius Ward an option there? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense too. I think if I know Derek as well as I think I do, which I don't know how well that really is. Who knows anybody? Right? But I would say I'd like to stick to two players. It's a good one. I think Josh Sweat would be a target for him. A 28-year-old pass rusher coming out who's shown in rotation to be very successful. And we've also seen without that rotation being less successful. So I think you would, again, if the role here, and we kind of already talked a lot about this team managing expectations.
Yep.
If that's going to be the name of the game, I think that's a really good target for a guy who can keep, maybe maybe 500 to 600 snaps. I think and again, I'm doing my best to do this off of recall, but I know, 2 years prior, I think he played 700 when he was that kind of high level, borderline Pro Bowl player, great situational pass rusher. And then they lose some of that depth Philly does on that Eagles line, and he's playing 700 snaps by game 8, and he's just not the same player at the end.
Right.
You could also find out that's conditioning. I mean, if that's something you can coach into him, and I don't know, I'm not saying, but clearly can be productive in a more limited space and more limited role. And if you're already managing expectations out, maybe it's, he plays behind Bud Dupree. Bud Dupree plays first and second down. You get him out on third down. You let Josh come in and hit. The other one that I really like for this team, especially if you get your medicals checked, which is important, but Dre Greenlaw. The loss of him in that Super Bowl, I don't think can be overstated.
Oh,
it was a different game, and again, credit to Mahomes and credit to Andy to being now a different game. We're just going to target these backup linebackers and eat them alive. But the loss of Dre Greenlaw in that Super Bowl, and to that defense in general, how well they were playing, was night and day. I think an underrated linebacker. Again, I think with the loss of him in that Super Bowl, we did see that. Yes, I do think playing next to Fred Warner gives you a little more coverage or flexibility in terms of what you're allowed to do, because Fred is an unbelievable player who can maybe cover some extra ground that other linebackers can't.
Right.
But I think we also saw that without Greenlaw on the field, that Warner struggled a little bit more, and that's a big thing to say. So I think to really let him be a Roquan Smith to your Bears, where like he changes the tone of your defense, and after being at a different place. I'm sorry, Roquan Smith to the Ravens.
Right.
Changes, going from the Bears and like coming in and really stabilizing Patrick Queen. Maybe he helps in that similar manner. Again, you have to make sure that Achilles is right. I can't. You'd have to trust your medicals, but that's why you. So you go in and say, hey, can you confirm that Green is still, going to be the guy that we think he is? I think that's a home run for this team to really secure that second level of your defense. And then you try to win with pass rush. I mean, if you can't, you either have to, at least in my opinion, the NFL is too expensive unless you draft exceptionally well to have elite corners and elite edge,
right,
or at least pass rush. So I think for me, again, knowing how Derek likes to build, we're going to rush the passer. We're going to get, try to get to the quarterback in less than a second. Obviously, that's an exaggeration. Second and a half.
Yeah.
And make life easier on our corners, and let them just be solid players. So I think Greenlaw can blitz. He can play in coverage. He can certainly stack and shed. And he's because he was that thumper, and that Warner's much not Warner guy playing in space and running, and there's been there's obviously that very famous play where he's covering CD down the slot. And makes a play on the ball, which is what makes him great. But Dre is the guy that allows him to do that because he can come up and cover the run game. So I think that would be a really, really fun target for them. Again, you'd have to, but I think would be a good one for them. And maybe get a discount because he is coming off an
injury. That is very true. I think with you are in this spot with this Birmingham team of just going like, I don't know. It's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't know. You have a potential team here. You don't have a sure thing team. So a Dre Greenlaw that you could at least say, even if you got 80% of Dre Greenlaw, that's a good pickup for any roster to have, because 80% of Dre Greenlaw is usually going to be better than 90% of the other linebackers that are around the league at this point, simply because we don't really have stellar linebacker play anymore, especially with the advent of the edge player. We don't have the 86 Giants. We don't have the 85 Bears.
Big Blue Wrecking Crew doesn't exist anymore.
Right, like you don't have those teams that is just stacked upon stacked with great linebackers anymore. And that's something to certainly consider. A Dre Greenlaw on that team was certainly good. Plus, you have a huge fuck the play up guy, and I'm a huge fan of getting the fuck the play up guy. That's
and just again, we don't want to link, but I think you did it. You touched on something I think is really interesting, and it's I would push back, and I think some teams are in the same way that the Titans zigged when everybody else zagged when they drafted Derrick Henry and said we're going to average 330 on the line and have a 200 because everybody else is going small, and your linebackers are now 220, and your safeties are 205, and your corners are 180, and we're running 1,000 yards every year.
Right.
You look at Baltimore, right? You look at Baltimore, who does, I would say Roquan and Patrick are high investment linebackers. You look at what the Jets are trying to do. Obviously, they signed Mosley. that didn't pan out fantastic. But you look at Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, like, but the Niners prioritize them in terms of keeping them around. So I do wonder if you're going to get this kind of zig when everybody else zags, or going to if everybody else is going to zig, maybe I zag to steal a game or to change the game plan or dictate the game plan. Another really good example of that was the 2012 Vikings when you're, just like, hey, I have Adrian Peterson and, I know he's Wolverine for lack of a better word, and we're going to come off an ACL and have the best running back season, I would argue, of all time. And just have a bigger offensive line and no quarterback play. So sort of on the opposite of the ball, I do wonder if there's going to be a world where a Zaven Collins, for example, where you're going to allow Zaven Collins to kind of be, I'll take on we're gonna do this Sean McVay and this Kyle Shanahan get into space and have pulling offensive linemen who are under 300 pounds, right? And now I have a better athlete at 260 who is going to beat you to the gap and is also is so much bigger than the guards that can't move. This running back's not breaking the tackle. And because not everybody's Trent Williams. I think that's something else that Trent is obviously, I think, a gamer who is unique in what he can do.
Yeah.
And is the engine that really makes that system go. But in the same way, and again, I don't want to I feel like I always pivot to the Giants, but the Giants now saying, hey, Isaiah Simmons, you're going to be a 6'4", 220, 230 pound safety / slot corner that will also play around the line of scrimmage. Just being bigger. And again, that's a response, I think, to Philadelphia being, again, a team that has zigged when people have zagged. I'm going to be I can squat. I got a quarterback and squat 600 pounds. I have an elite offensive line. Push. Innovation. Just be like, yeah, you're small because you want to rush the passer. Guess what? We're going to blow you off the ball. And then when you have to commit more to that, we're going to play action and throw to a top 5 wide receiver in A.J. Brown. We're going to have a top 15 wide receiver against the number 38 corner and have Devontae Smith win on that.
Right.
So I do wonder if you do get a hey, okay, this is really successful as counter to this. Do we get a shift in philosophy, which I think is always interesting.
I think that's the fun thing with every 5 years you start seeing a huge philosophy shift in a lot of people, and a lot of teams start going philosophy shift a different way, and then it's just it's the Ouroboros cycle that is constantly going in the NFL of doing things. But it's certainly
I didn't mean to sidetrack too much, but I think that's a philosophically such a fun point.
That's the point of this. That's the whole point of this exercise. That's why I cannot stand when we get into the same. I hate that the sports media at this point has turned into 2010 First Take with it's just Tim Tebow, where let's keep talking about X, Y, and Z. That's the reason I watch the shows I do or listen to the topics I do, because I don't want to hear constant. It's the reason. Honestly, it's the reason I like Sims as much as we were jokingly shit. Like he brings up, it's not all quarterback play. It's offensive line's a real big fucking problem. He's like, let me talk about these linebackers. Let me talk about these secondary players and what they're good at and what they're not good at. And even if you may disagree with some of the analysis, at least he's coming from an educated point, as opposed to half these talking heads out there that are just like, well, they can rush and they can do stuff because they do this. You're like, sure, I watched the game too, and I have the exact same fucking status if I was barely paying attention to the game. So it's important to have these philosophy talks, because that's how you actually understand what thinking goes on at a higher level of the game. We're going to pivot to your team. We are going to go.
Should I be a little quiet, or should I, be more or less talkative with that?
I mean, we'll see how it goes, and we are going to take ourselves over to Dusseldorf, Germany, with the Dusseldorf Bergs. Now, honestly, I think you drafted.
Probably my favorite logo, by the way. Say of the entire grouping, this is my favorite logo.
It's pretty rad, and you're not biased whatsoever.
Nice.
I'm not gonna lie, it's a really cool logo. Thanks for that, Adobe Firefox or whatever the fuck it was that made this. So you probably had the steal of the draft with Tyreek Woolen, and the fact that Woolen fell to 4 was simply, I think, just it was a philosophy standpoint.
Absolutely.
You then got a guard at Shaq Mason, another young player in Jordan Davis, Tyler Lockett at the wide receiver position, Dalvin Tomlinson at defensive tackle. So that's a big D line off the bat,
You ain't running on us, baby.
and with no
Not-
peer pressure involved whatsoever, Malik Willis is your quarterback.
Yeah, no, not at all. That was solely my decision, and I certainly stand by it.
No peer pressure was involved in that draft process at all. There was no NFL whispering to Jeff Fisher about Michael Sam involved in that whatsoever.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. Also, I love that you misspelled Shaq and put Shag Mason, and I will only refer to him as Shag Mason going forward. Because that is a much better name. I feel like he's either an Austin Powers character or he's a rapper that we missed. Shag Mason.
I fucking dig it. I do dig that. Honestly, this is one of the drafted teams that I think could actually be a reasonable expansion draft team. Like. To get Tyreek Woolen as your first pick is incredibly smart.
Thank you.
And then to just go, hey, we're going to go big. We're going to get Shaq Mason as a guard, as a high-value pick, and then we're just going to try to stonewall anything up the middle with two big-ass motherfuckers with Jordan Davis and Dalvin Tomlinson. How many snaps you can get out of them consistently is the question mark. And then, honestly, if you have to play Malik Willis just running for his life, Tyler Lockett's not a bad option to throw to because he's just a veteran that knows what he's doing. So, what was more of your philosophy in this team and why you thought this was the team to go with?
Yeah, initially it was certainly best player available. I thought, and I addressed this during the draft, when I took Willen, I thought if you accounted for positional value, this was the best player available on the board. If you account for age, you account for position scarcity, and then style of play, and I'll come back to those again. I obviously insinuated and not so insinuated in the previous episode that Kyle Pitts, regardless of position, was the best player. But Tyreek's a close second. Not only is again we talked about he gave up only 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, 10 pass breakups on an island, consistently on an island. Has played zone heavy scheme, has played man. All jokes aside, I'm really excited to see how he plays in McDonald's defense and with how smart McDonald has been and what he develops Kyle Hamilton into. Not that he's Kyle Hamilton. He's a bigger corner.
Yeah.
And we've seen that position be fun. So I don't want to pivot too hard into that, but I think he's going to be an all-pro level player if they can translate the Baltimore success into Seattle. So just took the best player available, but also, we talked about we went defensive tackle, obviously with Tyler in the middle of that. But certainly a aggressive downhill kind of style of team where Woolen is a willing tackler, had 45, 46 solo tackles, and the ability to play in space. And again, I'm not going to ask him to come up, hit Derrick Henry against Baltimore a ton, but if I get if I get something out the back door, against maybe, Chris, not that he's going to, tackle Christian McCaffrey one-on-one, but Kyle Shanahan, again, the Shanahan-McVay stuff, you need your corners to be able to tackle, play against the modern NFL, especially the run game, and I think he's willing to get up and fill the hole as a bigger corner and do that. So, again, Davis and Tomlinson will play a lot of snaps. If you go and look at his snap count, he's certainly higher than Davis. But if they can clog up the middle, first and second down, eat 4 linemen between the two of them, whoever my ends are, which is not super important. You expect an NFL end to win eventually 1-on-1, and then if Woolen can come in and hit, it seals up a lot for me. So again, talked a little bit about the beef in the middle of the field. The other thing that I think isn't accounted for, and again, I am philosophically trying to address the modern offense, right? Which if you're looking at successful modern offenses, outside of Patrick Mahomes, figure it out, which you're not going to beat. It is the McVay, Shanahan kind of offshoots. And again, obviously, what Mike McDaniel is running in Miami is not exactly the same as Shanahan, but it's man, if you didn't know Jimmy Garoppolo existed, you could just swap Tua and him and you wouldn't know the difference. It really is it's the same quarterback. It's run differently. Again, you're getting Hill in motion and you're getting Waddle in motion, but you're just asking Tua to blindly throw a spot, just like Jimmy was blindly throwing to a spot.
Yep.
Hitting those spots differently, but it's the same offense, and then the run game's the same. where you're trying to pull people, trying to get people into that, right on the hash marks, get them outside, let them run in space, which, like, again, could not be better exemplified by that Dolphins Broncos game, which is, again, just a Madden game. But if you really want to watch how the ideal Shanahan McDaniel offenses run, go watch that game, because that's the best version you're going to get of it. Anyway, to all of that, if you are unable to pull those guards or pull those tackles because you have 400 pounds, 800 pounds in front of you, that completely disrupts the entire offense. So I think that's besides just like, yeah, you can stop A gap runs and the push, like you can also disrupt pulling guards because they will not have the ability. Again, the center will just win immediately.
Yeah.
Or you're going to have a gap where you're just going to be able to, the quarterback won't be able to get the ball up. So that was sort of the thought process there. We joked about Malik. Malik is probably the quarterback that puts butts in seats and runs around and makes 2 talked about plays and then makes 14 really bad ones. So it keeps you, high in the draft.
Yep.
So that was sort of, again, the thought process. And again, I think I did a job with another team, foreshadowing, but I think I did a good job of stowing philosophically what I thought would stop the current meta in the offense, with some consideration of positional value, took the corner over the tight end, who, again, I think was the second best player in the draft. And then, again, a veteran wide receiver who I know can win on scramble drills, which is, again, if I was going to take a Malik or somebody like that, was going to be a good pairing.
I mean, the level of depth that you just went into, I'm truly not trying to kiss your ass. I wouldn't even thought of that. I would just, it's because when I look at the way I was drafting players, it's just the most general philosophical. Do these players allow me to have a chance to win on one side of the ball or not? And
sure.
A Davis-Tomlinson duo in the middle to fuck up pulling guards and tackles is ingenious thinking when the entire league is trying to get there. Matt LaFleur does a variation of his own as well. It's not as if I'm not benefiting from that in Green Bay right now. It's certainly so prevalent, and now the entire NFL is trying to find the answer as to how do we continually fuck this up and shut it down. We can fuck it up temporarily, but we can't.
Yep.
But very few teams have been able to just say, we're going to shut this team down. You don't see many Niners games where it's like 35-7 because someone figured them out, right?
No.
You see games where they lose max by 11 because it was a bad day for them, right? And granted, they have, pound for pound, probably the most talented roster in the league, but
for sure.
But nonetheless, that is great thinking to think of physicality. You have a physical team. Even Tyler Lockett, that's a physical player.
No, he's willing. He's willing. I don't know how able at his size, but he's willing.
Yeah.
And I think, just to touch base on the Niners again, a team that has given them some trouble is Baltimore. And we kind of talked about Zig when you zag, and like, man, I've got some 2 really big linebackers who can run. So like, I know Trent Williams can move still at 37, but I don't know if Roquan Smith before he's 30. And Roquan might beat you to the spot. And Patrick Queen can fill in if he can't. And I've got, elite, low cost defensive end and defensive tackle play in Van Noy and some of those other guys who can just fill the role. And I've got the chess piece in Kyle Hamilton who can drop and play the half side of the field, can play quarter, can play robber, or can take Kittle away, which is scary for them to hear. And if he's taking Kittle away, he's probably playing within the box, and he can hit McCaffrey and win in space. So again, sort of some of those. I think Baltimore is a team that maybe not necessarily from a schematic perspective can figure them out, but I do think, and this is sort of what I hinted at, is I don't know that you can out scheme Kyle Shanahan. He is one of the best offensive minds we have. I think you have to dictate the terms to him. And I know that's a scary thing to say, and it's not easy, but again, that's what this is. It's like I will not play a single snap in 4-3. I'm sorry, 3-4, or I might even play a bear front. I might even come down and play a bear on you and play the 46 and play a single high close to the line of scrimmage. And I will say, you're going to trade Brandon Ayuk, fine. If you're not going to keep Brandon Ayuk on that team, I'm not scared of anybody beating me over the top. And I'm going to have one more guy than you can block. I win with 2 people when you pull that guard. And you're going to pay Brock Purdy $56 million a year. He better be able to beat that. I don't think he's shown that he can yet.
Nope. My thoughts on Brock
So
Purdy have been very vehemently clear on this show, and you've heard every single one of them.
I have, and I agree for the most part. But I think even at the highest level, if you can win the wars and the gaps, and again, Shanahan gives you other gaps because if you're gonna pull, that's a vacancy, right? So if you can get two guys in that gap, and I'm not talking, again, if you're playing a bear front, I'm not talking just like Jordan Davis and a Dalvin Tomlinson person. But for example, if I was Dallas and didn't want to get my doors blown off, which they obviously don't care about that anymore, but if I could just get in front of Micah Parsons, because this is what they did with the Giants. That first game of the season, Micah Parsons just picked where the guards were pulling from and would beat Daniel Jones to the spot because he's just that good. And I'm not saying everybody has a Micah Parsons, but I'm saying, who could do that? Roquan Smith. Maybe a Dre Greenlaw.
Yeah.
Maybe a different team. Maybe an Isaiah Simmons. I know that's a very specific player, but like a guy who can win in space and disrupt the timing of that. So I think
athleticism and size. It's what you're looking for. You're looking for athleticism and size. I think
you can do it with a corner. I think I can do it with Woolen if I want. Because you just have to be able to. Because you don't have to beat a block. You just have to be faster through the gap than they are.
Yeah.
Because I don't. You can't out scheme it. He's going to outthink you. So you pressure answers everything. Whether it's pressure on the quarterback, pressure on the line, pressure to the running back to make a quicker decision than you want, you dictate to him, and that's scary as all hell. And I'm not sitting here being like, oh, I'm a better defensive coordinator. But like as someone who doesn't have the background and the skills and the years of schematics, but I have seen pressure win consistently.
Yeah.
I watched it. We had the Giants. I watched the Giants in 2007 beat the best offense of all time because they just didn't let Tom Brady throw the ball.
Yep.
And that was with zone blitzes and scheme. And we could win with 4, too, which is extremely rare. Did it again. I watched the best quarterback, arguably of all time, lose to Tom Brady because he had no offensive line play.
Yep.
You watch the 85 Bears go undefeated. So it is a proven. You watch Lawrence Taylor win an MVP, as he's the just completely taking over games and winning solo. You watch Micah Parsons, the only reason that is any good. Like you watch pressure wins. And again, it's not only QB pressures. If you can put pressure on the line, if you can make them think for a half second more, if you can make the running back hesitate a half step and get some help, it works at every level. So I think schematically that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And again, we can transition into. I would love obviously a T Higgins here because again the offense needs a possession-ish level receiver with Lockett. But man, I'm going to certainly look at Hassan Reddick, and I'm super biased on this because I watched him play in college. I watched him play against Ohio State when he was at the University of Buffalo, and I watched him be the best player on the field against a team of 5 stars in Khalil Mack. And I know his data skewed because he had that 6-sack game in terms of total sacks. But man, if I can just go to him and be like, look, I know you're not the player you once were. But what if I told you your only job is to run through the opening and just find the ball? I trust him to do that. I've seen him do it over and over again. And I'm not, again, managing expectations. I'm not going to have to sign him to a 5-year, $150 million deal. I can maybe sign him for 2 for 20 and make it mostly incentive based and say, hey, I'll pay you. You hit your sack numbers last year. I'll get you this. Yeah. So I'm also going to let you run. I'm going to keep you clean. And I'm going to let you just have a lot of fun playing football in a system where, you might have to take on a couple of linemen, which is why I don't like Reddick maybe as much. But where, you can have some fun and still maybe get some numbers or get some tackle for loss numbers that continue to pad your stats a little bit from when you're looking to make the Hall of Fame, which I think.
Well, I think that was another thing I was going to bring up. I think Khalil Mack in the system that you've set up, how many years, I'm thinking Khalil Mack could probably play 2 to maybe 3 more years.
Yeah. I think it's 2, which is why I said 2-year deal. I think it's 2.
Whereas I think you could maybe, with Mack's athleticism, even after injury and age, I think Khalil Mack has 3 to 4 years in a rotational, hey man, I just need you to go find the gap. I'm not asking you to engage. I'm not asking you to take on Trent Williams. I'm not asking you to take on any of these big-ass tackles anymore. What I'm asking you to do is, can you just fuck shit up by finding an empty gap and forcing them to go to do something else? It would almost be a nice anchor point to have Woolen on one side as your corner position in a nickel.
Exactly right.
And drop down and have Mac down on the other side and just be like, okay, I got a big physical motherfucker who can take it on one side, and I got another big physical motherfucker with athleticism on the other side. That is certainly an interesting thing. And a T. Higgins, Tyler Lockett tandem, that doesn't suck. That doesn't suck. Especially if you have a high point thrower like Malik Willis that just says fuck it and chucks it. That's the reason I love T. Higgins coming out in the draft. It was high point, high point, high point. Anytime, as much as Clemson, as good as Clemson was with Trevor Lawrence.
They were great. I mean, they were good. They weren't, sorry, go ahead.
As good as Clemson was with Trevor Lawrence, I always saw when I watched that T. Higgins tape was if there was a problem and Trevor didn't know what to do, it was throw it high to T and he's going to come down with it.
Absolutely.
And I love that.
Athletic plays.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
That's inherently where I like T. Higgins so much is there's a part of me that wonders what happens in Cincinnati when they can't pay all three of them. And what happens when T. Higgins goes away. Because if I'm somebody that's playing against them with I know they keep strengthening their offensive line, but it's still not world-beating offensive line. I would just be like...
They're trying. I give them credit for trying.
Yeah, I would just be like, okay, I understand Joe Burrow's good, but why don't we just bracket fucking Jamar Chase without T. Higgins on the other side? It's not as good. Let's just take him out of the equation and just be like, all right, Joe, beat us. We're going to put pressure on you, and we're going to take away your number one option. We don't care about it. You beat us somewhere else. That's our problem. That's our fault.
Yeah. Yep. I kind of joked, but I don't know if you heard me say that. My Joe Burrow stuff, man.
Yes.
I mean, like, to the Bengals' credit, for the first time in their history, I think, maybe the Carson Palmer era before the knee injury when you had Houshmandzadeh and Chad Johnson and Rudy Johnson and some pretty good players around there.
Right.
That you could put a lot of NFL quality quarterbacks in that system and be productive. I'm not sitting here and saying Joe Burrow didn't do a good job of going from the gunslinger that he was rookie year and just taking shots to chase to more of a check down, quick game style, like not taking it, took way less sacks in that series. But obviously his A-dot dropped significantly because that was the trade, right? Like you can't, if you're going to we're going to get the ball out, you're not going to make the explosives that you've had. But he, to me, is just distributing the ball. And it's, I'm not saying he's Brock Purdy. I'm not saying that. But I also I can't justify, and this might be a hot take. I can't justify him making the same money as Trevor Lawrence. If you look at, again, we talked about elite play, in my opinion. There are certainly so many factors. Everybody has so many things. At its core, if you're an elite quarterback, you should be elevating the players around you, right? You should be making the players around you better. I think Trevor Lawrence, Evan Ingram is the best example of that, right? Evan Ingram I'll put the chart in the chat. Nobody was more disruptive or created more negative EPA than Evan Ingram did over his career with the New York Giants. And that stat is including drops, deflections that became interceptions, which he led the NFL in his time with the Giants. He also led the NFL in tipped passes into the air that became pick sixes, which is a stat that you should never lead the NFL in. And now he is a third contract with a top 10 salary in the NFL for tight ends because Trevor Lawrence made him so much better. Zay Jones's contract has been justified. Do you remember how crazy that contract was when he got him?
Yep.
Trevor's made him a great player.
Christian Kirk's a good player, but he looks great in Jacksonville.
Calvin Ridley took 2 years off, and literally, there's literally a YouTube clip. You can just Google this. He should have had 8 more touchdowns, but he doesn't know how to get his goddamn feet in the ground. And they're not bad throws. They're great throws that he will not put his second foot down. After 2 years off in the NFL, Trevor consistently raises the play of people around him. And that's been shown by, again, EPA per play. In terms of EPA for dropback, Jacksonville is a significantly better team. Those players are producing at a much higher level than they were the previous teams. I don't see Joe Burrow doing that. We're talking about how elite, T. Higgins is at the point of attack. We're talking about how many times in that rookie season and I guess this is going to be the point people bring up, when Chase set up that rookie receiving record, is that I'm going to catch the ball at 5 yards and go 70 and just be this explosive playmaker that I am because Joe Burrow got me the ball on 5 yards. There wasn't a ton of those. Remember the play against the Chiefs? legitimately just a curl and go. There was two against Baltimore went over 200. One was a nice long pass. Two of them were dig routes that he broke 4 tackles and ran. One of them was, the other was, I think, a curl.
Yeah.
So he's just distributing the ball in the way Kirk Cousins does. And again, Kirk's the best at getting that money, but I don't see the level of elevation that you're getting. And maybe a better comp is Lamar Jackson, because I think that's the person who doesn't get enough credit. And here's the other comp to Lamar Jackson. Joe Burrow's missed more games than Lamar Jackson has in the past 3 years. You talk about Lamar being injury prone. This guy can't stay on the field. So I didn't mean to get into like a Joe, but to the point of T. Higgins being an elite player, right? And you brought up Trevor Lawrence from his college days. He has 2 elite receivers, right? At least 2, right? And you have a great play caller who's playing to your strengths.
And he had Tyler Boyd too, who's no fucking schlub.
Absolutely. And you're getting the ball out quick. You had Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon was a good running back for them. They have a lot around him and that's, I'm not blaming the Bengals for building a good team. I understand that. But for people to sit here and be like, he's better than Josh Allen, you are out of your mind.
Well, there's still people that believe he's better than Patrick Mahomes because people are fucking stupid.
I will not even engage with those people. That is the most outlandish thing I could ever. And I just gave you a lot of reasons why. I mean, I feel like that's, again, I am one person with one opinion, and I'm certainly, ready for the hate if for the people that are Bengals fans.
Trust me, this is going to be clipped, and it's going to be in shorts and TikTok and everything for a long, long time. Nice. But it's important to know that, because it's what informs you about the play. It's the reason why I remember when we were first having our bigger discussions, when we were first getting to know each other about all-time rankings and all that shit, like the softballs you have with your friends that are sports fans, right? And it's the reason both of us will die on the hill for the quarterback that we grew up with, because when you look at what was around them, it wasn't nearly as good, except small high points in their careers, right? Where, the majority of my bulk as a Green Bay fan with Brett Favre, he's taking Donald Driver and guys,
right?
Or he's taking Robert Brooks or Antonio Freeman and guys and making them something special. Whereas there's high point years where a real receiver core is there, where you're like, oh yeah, shit, Brett's got help. Eli had the exact same thing, and you will die on that hill with just like, he had nobody.
I can't go into that now because we don't have enough time. But
I know.
We can do a separate pod for sure. But
it's the exact same thing you're talking about with Joe Burrow. To have Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Mixon, they've had it. Uzama was good in that offense with them as a 4th or 5th option as well.
Drew Sample as a tight end too has been solid.
Yeah, so
they've had some good stuff. Tyler Eifert had some good years with them. I mean, there's been some they've spent. And to be fair to Cincinnati, for the first time, this is what you should do for a young quarterback.
Absolutely.
I'm not sitting here being like, this is a bad. The Bills did it for Josh Allen, but now you look at Josh Allen. Now that you paid Josh Allen. He's Superman. He's too much Superman sometimes because he's trying to do too much because nothing around him else is good. Now that Diggs is gone, especially. But Joe Burrow is not okay. Okay, if you can get 1,400 from Chase as a rookie, why can't we get around there again? Why are we struggling with this? And again, yardage is not indicative of necessarily all the success, but you would think that, hey, I need to take this step. I need to be better. And I not only do I not see that, he's always hurt. And like, again, we've talked a lot about health in this exercise. Man, if you're not going to hate on Lamar injuries, you have to hate on Burrow for his injuries.
Yeah,
because it's more.
You have to be honest with your assessment. Yeah, if you're hating on Lamar Jackson for injury, Joe Burrow's in the same camp, if worse. Yep. So it's obvious. Yep. Now we're gonna move to it.
Sorry, didn't mean to tangent that much.
No, but it's good conversation to understand where we're at, and this is what you need. Right. You need a fair and honest assessment, even if someone doesn't agree with you. That was an extremely justified case. It wasn't just like, I hate Joe Burrow because I hate Joe Burrow. Well, why? Well, I hate Joe Burrow. That's because that's the pointlessness of some of this shit. We're going to move over a team that I personally drafted. Team I wasn't super excited about, frankly. And that was the London Knights. The charcoal black and silver white team that we got over in London. Yeah. This is a team that is highlighted by its number 1 pick with Joey Bosa.
Yep.
Get another good
He's already
veteran.
hurt, by
Exactly what I fucking talked
already hurt
about.
week to
Um,
week.
Jake Matthews is your anchor at left tackle. Andrew Wiley
Yep.
is your right tackle pick. And then here's where this whole draft went downhill. I took Michael Mayer for a young tight end, which, okay, that's fine, developmental prospect. But then I took Dalton Schultz again, so I doubled up on tight end. And then I shocked all of you by taking Mitchell Trubisky, and I shocked myself by taking Mitchell Trubisky at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Second
most controversial pick behind Watson, which we'll get to in a minute. But
I mean,
yeah,
you knew I was going to make one of them. You knew I was going to make one of them. This is a team in which inherently, again, London's in this weird. Dusseldorf would have the fifth pick, so
sure.
BPA was a good solution for you. London, it was kind of similar. You're at 4, so unless somebody falls to you, because for some reason one of these expansion teams in front of you decides, oh, we don't want a quarterback, you're probably not going to take a quarterback. So that was my philosophy: was, all right, we got to be competitive and in the mix, but not so good, which is the logic behind Trubisky.
Yeah.
Inherently, this is we're going to be tough in the trenches kind of team with Matthews, Wiley, and Mayer. And then we're going to get some scramble plays off to the side with Dalton Schultz trying to take a few shots down the post and a few on those out routes with Schultz and Trubisky on a rollout. I think Trubisky could be not great or even good, but above average if we could just learn how to read a fucking end and play a read option with checkdowns on a lot of stuff, because he does have athleticism. Sure. So this is where I was just like, okay, I got a pass rusher who, if he's healthy, I can go fuck shit up, and I got an offensive line that can hopefully block for a guy with playoff experience and some athleticism. That was the whole theory.
I think you said some good stuff. I think the best thing you said was, again, we talked a little bit about managing expectations. Second overall pick, the rest of the players in that class, I don't need to break Bears fans' hearts again. Maybe they don't care anymore because they got Caleb Williams, but
no, they
Mahomes,
should. They should. They shouldn't have Caleb Williams because they should have Patrick Mahomes.
Correct. But you made a really good point. I think if you watched that UNC offense that he was in, and again, he didn't start a ton. He only had one season as a full starter. I think they said something like 70% of his attempts were like RPOs.
Right.
And like, if you're going to be, and it's off of RPO, you are only reading a single side field inherently, right? You're reading an end, you're reading a specific player, and then you're going to make a decision of, okay, if they're make X, you're going to do A. If they do Y, you're going to do B. If they do Z, you're going to do C. So you're only looking at this side of the field. So he never really had to go 1 to 3. He never had to go 1 to 2, really, essentially. But to your point, like if you progressed a little bit and you can do like some RPO stuff where you can at least maybe have a 9 route in a corner, like where you can go high low on that. Maybe if you're going to do a zone read with like a drag or like a zone rollout and like a layer, like a zone flood, we're going to be like a drag, maybe a 5-yard crosser and a 15-yard out, and give him a couple options on one side of the field. Certainly something I think makes productive. Again, you would eventually run into the problem if you get 5 weeks of film of that and you're going to do a DC who's like, yeah, I'm just not going to play the other side of the field, which might cause some problems. But again, for an expansion level, I think it's fine. I from a philosophical standpoint, first 3 picks made a lot of sense to me. And I talked about, you need a quarterback, rush, protect your quarterback, get the other quarterback. You did 2 of those 3 things out of the gate. Again, there are obviously injury concerns with a ton of players, but you're going to run into that. Joey Bosa, when healthy, I talked about how productive he is. And again, the thing that always stood out to me when I was looking at that was the amount of pressures that become sacks for him, right? And pressures are important too, right? We talked about pressure. Pressure really can change a lot. But he does such a good job of turning pressures into actual sacks.
Right.
Good player, obviously great player, I'd obviously argue. Matthews has been a cornerstone for a long time. Wiley's a serviceable starter. I don't hate 2 tight end stats. We kind of talked about zigging when Zach world where I'm playing 220-pound linebacker. I'm playing 190-pound safeties.
Right.
Double tight end sets, and again, especially if you're going to re-option, like maybe you can just out physical some people sometimes. So I think that makes some sense. I do think in terms of free agents, I think a wide receiver would certainly help this team. I think we already talked about T. Higgins kind of being the cream of the crop. do you look maybe to a Chris Godwin, who I'm stunned is still going to be under 30 by the end of this is done.
Right.
But if you're talking about a productive slot player who's played both, like if you're going to talk about being able to do both and has shown, earn the trust of, the former GOAT Tom Brady, and been the guy that Tom Brady can trust. Tom Brady, maybe not to the extent that Aaron Rodgers doesn't distrust and isolate wide receivers, but Tom's pretty hard. Tom's pretty hard on some people. If you hear Rob Gronkowski talk, or Edelman, especially in the Dynasty or in any of the podcasts they've been on, for Godwin to earn his trust, that certainly gives me, again, some trust in, hey, this is a guy who knows what he's doing and can do that. I think Godwin would be a really nice pickup. I think maybe, can they sign Jordan Love? You still have Jordan Love here.
No, because remember, this happened before Jordan Love signing. That's why Tua is still on this list, even though no one would touch that. I'm
giving you a hard time as a Packers fan. You know that.
No, another thing I would think about here was, again, I think if you're going to try to make this team succeed, trying to just magically get defensive players to make a makeshift defense is not inherently your best option through free agency. Especially if you're trying to do defense, that's where... I'm not saying... Every position gets overpaid in free agency. Every side of the ball gets paid over the mark in free agency.
Yeah.
But we see a lot of, like, pass rusher has one good year, they get paid, they suck. We see a lot of corner gets paid, and unless you're like top corner, most of the time that's money. It kind of goes down the tubes. To me, if you have a problematic quarterback, which that is what I have with Mitchell Trubisky, I'm also looking at, hopefully, in the next 2 years, getting a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would think about is Godwin would be an option that I would really like to see. I had him down for my Oklahoma City team. I would say the same thing for London. The other thing I would think about here is 2 big-time dependable veterans. At the receiver position, I'd look at Brandon Cooks, who's always productive. Cooks is... It is amazing to me how productive that motherfucker is in any offense he's ever been in. The other one is, although I'd be battling age, simply to help learn and help a guy learn, maybe break 1 or 2 with some decent athleticism, but a great blitz pickup to help a guy learn is Aaron Jones. A 30-plus-year-old Aaron Jones is not something I'm like banking my franchise on, right? But that's a player who's incredibly smart. If you watch the development of Jordan Love, it takes an exponential jump when Aaron Jones gets back on the field because he can start going, I can trust a check down. Or I can trust that the blitz pickup is going to be picked up. Or Aaron Jones might even save my ass from time to time when I don't do it perfectly. If you have that one-sided offense like we talked about with Mitchell Trubisky, it wouldn't suck to at least be like, all right, I hit a blitz pickup, and now I'm going to go out on the backs, and you just do a backside throw. I think you can teach an elementary school quarterback to do wait, look, chuck it to the other side if no one's there kind of thing.
Yeah.
So is he the most explosive player at plus 30 in 2025? No. But am I gaining more value by getting a real veteran that's a great team guy there on a decent deal? Plus, he's an Army brat that's moved all around the country his entire life. So I know he's probably not going to have a problem moving somewhere because he's done it his entire life. So I'm getting a really good team guy pickup that can help my quarterback develop, even if it's Mitchell Trubisky. That was kind of the theory there.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective, and I think obviously exposure to Aaron Jones a little bit more than maybe the average viewer. I think helps you with that.
Certainly.
And I think it's a fair point. I think again he's also someone that doesn't have and I don't want to jump the gun, but the similar to the Tony Pollard pick on the next team doesn't have a ton of career touches. At this point of his career, because he's a little older, like he doesn't have the touches. He's way less touches than, for example, Saquon Barkley, who's much younger.
Right.
You look at again, he may not run the way a standard older 30+ running back does. Another thing that's interesting to look at is wide receiver production over the age of 30, 31 is a pretty drastic downfall. You don't see a ton of 1,000-yard receivers in that 31, 32 level of production. So it is the Brandon Cooks part of it is when does he lose that stat? Because he's obviously a speed player. He ran 4.33 coming out. He's been, but he's obviously had his explosiveness the entire time.
Right.
So it will be interesting to see how how productive he is as he comes through as a little bit older. It's obviously also not to get too far off that, but the Tyreek Hill deal that just got done, at 31, 32, does Tyreek still continue to return value on that? So I say that to say, people might freak out about taking a running back at that age. But again, if it's a running back with that many touches versus look at Cooper Kupp is a really good example after winning that Triple Crown and then being more injury prone and just not being the player that he was. And Sean McVay going, yeah, it's really Puka's job now, not yours. So,
right.
You have age problems at any position in terms of elite play and slowdown. So, not a perspective I would have never thought Aaron Jones, but I think you said it makes.
I just think you're in a spot where you need to help people, and sometimes help isn't as simple as get a playmaker because everyone's thinking that. And now you're in a market with 40 teams vying for players, not 32. And so, obviously every free agent can really narrow it down to 3-4 teams, maybe that they really have an option to go to. With a 40 team, you maybe be able to take that up to 10 or 8 or 10, maybe even 12 if you're a really hot player. So you're going to need more of those veteran guys that are just really good locker room guys that can help you and get those quick bursts from time to time, which is the whole logic behind that London targeting of Aaron Jones. Plus, I did think it was very funny getting an army brat that's moving his entire life. Yeah. Fuck it, let's just move him to Europe. He'll be fine.
Yeah, he'll be all right. Yeah.
Alrighty, we're gonna move off of London. We're gonna go to your second team. We're going to Monterrey.
Yeah. Yep.
And this is a team, the Monterrey Cerveceros, Los Cerveceros de Monterrey. You got to deal with Patrick Mahomes, which is really fun. And the funniest part here with your draft class is that is not seen at all. You did your classic zig when zag. You got Joe Tooney at the guard, Ryan Ramczyk at offensive tackle, Jermaine Illuminor at the guard, Andrew Voorhees at the guard, Tony Pollard at running back, and you took a swing on Treylon Burks at the wide receiver position. You went all offense when basic logic would dictate I have to go defense to fuck Patrick Mahomes up.
Yeah.
Interesting choices.
How's that worked for everybody else so far? Being defensive heavy and beating Patrick Mahomes?
It doesn't because he's the best quarterback of all time. I've said it on every podcast I've had the chance to because he's the best.
Right. And the teams that have given him problems, right? Like the Ravens and the one time Baltimore got by him. I think I used the Super Bowl against Tampa as an outlier, sort of again, he had so many offensive line injuries before. But the teams that have been able to beat him or at least make it interesting, and I think this is going to be interesting with the Chargers if this happens, is you sort of play him the way that you used to play the old Jim Kelly Bills, which you just don't let them have the ball. And you clock control, run the ball, you limit his possessions, which is what the Niners tried to do in the Super Bowl, and they did a pretty solid job of it in the first half.
Yep.
So I didn't think I could make it work. I didn't think I could get enough talent on a defense to be like, I can make this work against Mahomes.
Right.
What I did have to do is, and this is something I'm okay with philosophically anyway, is get a bunch of really good offense, like the best offensive lineman I can get. I'm going to get a running back with some explosiveness that, again, has a low career touch numbers. I'm going to get a wide receiver who's a big body, who does have explosive plays in the 1 to 10 and 10 to 19-yard range. Again, we talked a little bit about the Titans kind of, again, managing expectations we talked about earlier. He's not A.J. Brown. He doesn't have the last gear, but he's really explosive in short areas. And he's a willing, effective blocker. Effective relative to what they're asked to do. But again, we can get in and we're going to be this kind of mouth team. He's used to that being, former Mike Vrabel Titan. We are willing to do that. So my thought process here was, again, maybe not necessarily zig, but it was, again, you go to the Giants Super Bowl again against those Bills, and you watch a much inferior Giants team just give Otis Anderson the ball every opportunity they can, run the play clock down consistently, run the ball well, and again, sneak out of there on a missed field goal. It was still hard, but again, those late 80s, early 90s Bills teams they have what, 4 they got Thurman Thomas, Hall of Famer, you have Jim Kelly, Hall of Famer, you have Andre Reed, I think is at this point Hall of Famer. You have 4 Hall of Famers on offense, and you're just don't let them touch the ball because you're not going to stop. So that Super Bowl still is the record for time of possession for a single team with that Giants team. And it is that's my thought process here. Is I'm gonna give the ball. I'm needing another running back, and I'll third, fourth round if this is where I was going to be. It was a little more bruising, kind of be a thunder and lightning flow. But again, I don't know that I necessarily zagged in the sense of, again, going back to history of successful teams, when you're playing these unbelievable offenses, if you can't get there with four with pressure, you're just not going to win.
Right.
I didn't think I had four defensive ends to do that. But I thought I could build enough of an offensive line and run the ball to control the clock. And even against Justin Herbert or something like that, who's also, I would say, not quite Patrick Mahomes, but a pretty elite player.
Yeah.
Want to run the ball. And I think I can do that. I can keep the ball out of Patrick's hands. And that's sort of my goal here.
I think that's why I started with basic logic, because the idea that someone's magically, this is, again, it goes back to talking head issues and fans that don't know what they're talking about. You just got to stop him.
Yeah.
Or for instance, this is actually a loving memory. It's not to shit on a family member, but I remember watching Packer teams with my great grandpa before he passed away, and he's remembering, like he goes, like, he was middle aged when Lombardi was around. That's how old he was at the time. And he's like, oh, they just got to run the ball, and I was just like, and even as like a teen at the time, I was looking at him, I was like, Grandpa Jim, this is an offensive line that's athletic and can't beat people in a, like, we're talking just post Amon Green Bay Packers, right?
Yeah.
So
great name, by the way. Phenomenal player.
Yeah. So you don't have a phenomenal running back, and you have more of a shifting athletic offensive line. You don't have like the big bruiser, we're going to fuck you up kind of line. You have Brett Favre and a developing wide receiver core with Donald Driver, Greg Jennings, and James Jones, and a functional tight end in Donald Lee. That's not a team that you just go, we're going to run the ball. It's like, no, that's a team you pass the ball as much as possible. And I always find it funny is, like, even if you're on the offensive side of the ball, so many people think it's just so easy. It's like, you just got to stop them. It's like, you don't stop people. You don't just magically stop Randy Moss or Calvin Johnson. You don't magically stop. When Tom Brady's cooking, he's doing it. So the way to fuck it up is to disturb it, not we can just magically stop Tom Brady from being a cerebral quarterback. As much as I can't stand the guy, it's the truth. There's a reason he has 7 championships. So inherently, that is a model of success that you can probably work with against. The only thing that might screw you against the Chargers just want to run the ball as much as possible now.
That's my philosophical change.
Right.
Yeah.
Who would be a free agent target here in Monterey? Do you continue that idea of we're gonna keep it on offense, or are you gonna go a little bit more counterpart here?
So I think, and I hinted at this, kind of pre-show. I think it really depends on Dallas at this point. Dallas is sort of the central, hub of free agency. And again, Jerry Jones thinks he's playing Texas Hold'em against those 3 players. He's not. It's a stock market watch, and the stock of those 3 players only continues to go up as other players sign for expensive deals, and they're always going to push for more expensive deals. Being a Dallas Cowboy does not have the aura that it used to have, where you can get, he made a claim about, being Dallas, you can sign better commercials and all stuff. During Dak Prescott doing Sleep Number, I haven't seen much else. See Patrick Mahomes everywhere, don't see that with, I think maybe Jerry still thinks it's the 1980s, 1990s, where being Dallas was a better television opportunity than maybe other markets, but that's just gone. That's not a thing.
Yeah, Jason Witten kind of killed that idea. Because they gave him a chance and he fucked it up, and now everyone's like, fuck these Cowboys even more than they used to.
He needed the media coaching that Greg Olsen got. Because, by the way, Greg Olsen, man, I'm glad he got re-signed. I'm happy for him. I think he's going to be. He's I think one of the best color commentators in the game that we have. Anyway, not to sidetrack too much, but this is a team where I'm willing to pay, because I'll get the first pick in the draft, and I'm most likely going to take a quarterback. If I like one, if I don't, I'm going to trade back and have multiple firsts in the next year where I can trade up for a quarterback. So I'm going to take a swing at an elite young player. If that's CeeDee Lamb, again, we talked about a little bit off mic about there is a lot of snaps at slot wide receiver for CeeDee Lamb.
Yep.
A little scary. Again, it's not like slot wide receivers can be great. We watched Cooper Kupp win the Triple Crown from that position with, again, some Sean McVay. There's some stuff where he's playing in line, stuff where he's outside. But primarily playing the slot. So you can scheme some stuff and make it work. But again, it's still, a top, I don't want to do the list right now, but top 7, 8 wide receiver. Somewhere in that neighborhood, we can do a separate conversation about that. I'd rather have Micah. I mean, that's probably what I want. I know you can still tag and all other stuff, but like that would be my biggest target. Like CD, would love to have Parsons. If I can't do that, AJ Terrell. I think AJ Terrell is an incredibly underrated player. Still gonna be 26. I don't think he signed a new deal yet. We'll check that, but it's on the list. I hope Atlanta would be fools to let him go. They plays on a ton and is super successful. I remember we talked a little bit about that LSU Clemson game, and he got beat once by Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in that game. Like you watched him when he's one-on-one, he's winning most of those matchups. He does a great job of playing on an island, and that's what you want from your corners. I would love. I'll pay him. He's 26. I'll pay him. I'll give him a nice 5-year deal. I'll give him a Jalen Ramsey level deal. I think he's that level of player. And again, I'm not gonna have to pay a quarterback, so that makes my life a lot easier. In terms of second level player, one that's on here, he's a little bit further down, but I really like. I think with position flexibility is Jeremy Chin. I think he's played some safety. I don't like that he's Washington now. I think that's a good signing for Washington. But he can play safety. He can play in the box. He can hit. He can run. He can stack and shed. He can play in coverage. I love the versatility that he brings, and I love that he was a small school player that picked up the NFL very, very quickly. A player I'm willing to maybe not pay top of the market for, but I can give him a 3-4 year deal, maybe a little bit above average, and entice him with, hey, you're a start of something special here. You're not super old yet. We're maybe I can get both. Maybe I can get Terrell and him.
I think that's a reasonable approach, and obviously, just to give myself props, you heard me. I stood on the fucking table for AJ Terrell. I know you liked AJ Terrell being a Clemson guy, but I told everybody that would fucking listen. I was like, he's the number 1 corner in this draft. It's not close, and anyone who thinks it's Jeff Okudah is out of their fucking minds.
Yeah, and I had him at corner. I think I had him at quarter 1 as well. I had him very close because I remember watching and again, it suckered me into the Rondale Moore thing, but I remember watching that pregame and watching Ohio State just not being able to run with him, and I'm like, this is not good.
Right.
So I think I would. This is a team where I'd prioritize a high level free agent early. I would a CD again. Mike is not going anywhere, but if I could somehow get Micah, that's what I want. I don't necessarily think. I'm not paying market for Dak. If I get below market for Dak for maybe a couple years, and he just wants to come back on a great offensive line, I'm certainly willing to pay that. I'm not paying him $57-60 million either. I just don't think I can do that. I'd love to get I'm going to probably sign Jeremy Chin as a second level free agent, and then whatever I can get between CD and Terrell would be my young stud, and then hopefully
Is there, so this is obviously very early for 2025 draft coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a quarterback out there that you at least think is worthy of a number 1 pick of an expansion team in this upcoming draft? In terms of, do you think they could be something? Because you're not going to treat them like David Carr back in 2002, where you're just going to be like, fuck it, just get destroyed every day of your life forever. Is Ewers that guy? Is Beck that guy? Is there another quarterback out there that you like?
Beck's fun. If I need another year, and I'm going to say this just maybe for the to say it, Connor Weigman, if I'm saying that right, the Texas A&M quarterback, is a lot of fun. If you want to watch him and watch some mobility, watch some arm talent, the ball pops out of his hands. He's not doing a lot of the line of scrimmage, which that's a lot of college offenses right now.
Right.
That scares me. I want to see you call your own protections at least, and not have to look at the sideline for it. And that's a deal breaker for me at some point. But he only had a couple starts last year, but explosive athlete, big arm, good touch. Layered throws are consistent. I need to see more of it. Need to see him, but Beck's good. Beck is not a franchise-altering player. I think he's a Kirk Cousins-esque level player, which is certainly fine. That's fine. I don't want Kirk Cousins at 1 overall.
Well, that's the big thing. Is you have the number 1. So if you don't have that, I loved when you said right away, we'd be brave enough to just say, We'll trade back. It's the Bill Polian when he was with the Panthers. The Panthers had the number one pick, and
Right.
he literally said, "I've never been happier to lose a coin toss because they didn't get the expansion draft pick." And then he
Right.
traded it away immediately and traded back for more players, and that's why
Right.
another reason why Carolina was good
Yep.
immediately. Um,
Yeah.
I love the idea of what happens if you're what happens if you're a franchise that's desperate that you should have the number one pick, but just because it's the wrong year for expansion, you're pick 9. Do you ransom your future if you believe in one of these guys and you just if you're Monterey, you just say, "Hey, we could take one of these guys,
Yeah.
or I can trade back and I can probably get 3 1s for this pick because they really love him."
Yeah.
And if for the right deal, you could even say, "Hey, I'm giving up a potential of creating my future. I want 3 1s in your 2 this year."
Yeah.
And maybe you pick up, you still maybe get your kid from A&M if you really like him,
Yeah.
and you could
But
get maybe a pass
I'm,
rusher or
I'm
something.
I haven't done enough film, and obviously got to see another year of tape on everybody. But you know, you always go back again to the Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was nothing before that Heisman campaign. So
Right.
you know, you always got to take a year and really figure that out. But yeah, I think you always have to listen. I like the 9 pick there because it's a very Chicago Bears, Carolina Panthers esque kind of trade there. Which again, if you really believe in your guy, I think you do got to go. I mean, if you look at like the Josh Allen trade, the Mahomes trade, those things obviously pan out pretty well for. Um, Sometimes you miss. Sometimes you miss, and like you get a Zach Wilson, and like that's certainly usually a death sentence for you. Obviously, the Jets have gotten away with it a little bit more, which I guess Aaron Rodgers has been the thing that's bailed them out.
Yeah.
I don't understand how Joe Douglas loves his job, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to get into that, but uh, again, yeah, if someone loves somebody and they're willing to give me a couple ones and a 2 and maybe we do some swaps down the line. This is a very defensive heavy class. I'd pick up a couple more defensive players that are top notch. Love to have the ammunition to come up in another year. Maybe is Arch Manning what he's supposed to be? Is a player of that caliber with that pedigree? Do you expect him to kind of come out and be that guy? And again, maybe I can go to 12 and get Sanders. If Sanders can figure out his drifting problem in the pocket, he can he can throw to all levels of the field. He's got some good mobility. The processing is a little slow for me, but if I can get him at 12 and QB4, it's certainly something I would consider, depending how far I got to go back. But obviously have to watch a little more tape on him. But yeah, you always got to listen. And again, maybe. And again, I don't want to keep going back to Dallas, but maybe that's a situation where like, hey, we've lost Dak, we lost Dak, we signed CD. I can't afford. Sorry, vice versa. I've signed Dak, I've signed CD. I can't afford Micah. I love the defensive player at the top of this draft. I'll pay. I'll give you 1 overall, and we'll swap. We'll just straight up swap it. I'll take Parsons, and I'll pay him. I'd be
Bold.
willing. I'd be willing to do that. I think he's top 5 player in the league at such a young age, and didn't play defensive end for a long time. Like played it for a little bit in college, and then the thing I hate, and again, this is just a little bias showing. Dallas was never going to play him there until the injuries, and Demarcus Lawrence went out, and they were just rotating through bodies, and they was like, hey, Micah, and he has 6 pressures and 3 sacks in the first game. They're like, oh, we should do this all the time, which should have been his spot from the begin with.
Yep.
And just Dallas continuing to kind of fall into just fall into a lucky pick and not realize the talent, but be forced into having it happen and getting lucky, just getting lucky that happened. But again, yeah, to answer your question, more than happy to come down from 1 for a king's ransom or an elite player that maybe another team's not.
I dig it. I dig it. I do love the other thing is we talked about this before. Like, you're an expansion team. You don't have salary cap problems, except maybe the next team we're going to talk about. So, yeah, pay for Jeremy Chin, pay for AJ Terrell, because you have the kind of team that you could go. I have the number 1 pick in the draft. I'm confident in a quarterback. I don't have to pay him for 5 years. I can pay CeeDee Lamb, AJ Terrell, and Jeremy Chin plus my offensive line, and I can make a wild card run day 1.
Mm-hmm.
That's not insane. And that's certainly something that could be worthwhile. But we're going to move forward to Munich, our buddy Minraj had Munich, the Munich Bavarians here with another really good logo. Good job,
Yep,
Adobe AI
for
here.
sure. Yep,
It's a great logo. I do love that logo.
yep.
It's great. It's great. Does help
I
that
do
they
too.
have the old Charger colors, frankly. Um,
For sure.
but
Yeah.
Minraj here has a decent. I don't know if we can even see decent. He has a wild card draft that is highlighted by the biggest wild card pick that we got. So his first pick is Debo
Yep.
Samuel. We then go Kendall Fuller at corner, Leonard Floyd at defensive end, DJ Reader at defensive tackle. So he's got a good basis of a defense here. He then chooses Deshaun Watson to be his quarterback. And I believe I had to make the sixth pick for him at that point, and I gave him Devin Singletary to at least have something friendly on that offense to help Deshaun Watson out.
Yeah.
Is this a team that you just? What is this team to you?
I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna skim over some of the Debo. I know I was doing my best Mel impression there, but Debo has not been overly productive or overly healthy. He plays a very physical style of ball. Um, you kind of have to manufacture touches for him out of the back, which cuts into the value of Devin Singletary, who you also drafted here. Kendall Fuller's a fine starter. He's going to be a 2. I would think on most teams. Leonard Floyd, I think, is at the end of his career. Um,
He did distinct situational pass rusher on that one, but yes.
For sure. Yeah, and that's what he's got to be. Reader, I think he can play a little bit of nose. He can play a little bit of, four tech or 3 tech, whatever you kind of need him to do there. Singletary's fine. He's a fine running back that'll get you 800 yards and what. The thing here is Deshaun. If we can, all right, I guess I got to do this first. Deshaun Watson, if all the allegations are true and he paid off all those women, he did those despicable things, as a horrible human being and should not be a part of the NFL. And
Correct.
Shouldn't have never been drafted on that alone. And I don't know how else to. I don't want to address it anymore. About how horrific of a human he is. If again those allegations are all true, which we were led to believe that they are.
Right, and Minraj did try to say,
Yes.
hey. So
he backed out of that. Yeah, pretty quickly. And I understand it, and I'm not. He's got a lot of other stuff going on. I'm not saying Minraj is endorsing that, which is
right, exactly.
Neither are we by having this in this operation.
Right.
All of that aside, which you cannot just say all of that aside, but I wanted to at least address it. The contract is atrocious. The contract is the worst contract in the NFL. And Minraj addressed it after he looked at it. He didn't realize it was a $63 million hit that year that you cannot get out of. It is fully guaranteed. I don't understand how this is not addressed as the worst trade in NFL history either. The amount that you gave up to do this and then pay him that has to be the most horrific overpay for player and then for draft compensation that's ever occurred. Not to continually rip on this, but he's also somebody who's been consistently injured, and then also the coaching staff doesn't know what's actually going on, and he is injured. He isn't injured. It's a shoulder. It's a rotator cuff. It's a lat injury. It's a scapula. And then he's going to play. He's not going to play. He comes in. He doesn't look like he has the arm strength. Then he says he's not ready. So there's even inconsistency in the staff of what's going on there. So he's not even the player he once was. I mean, there's some world where if you look at late Texans, Deshaun looked like he was coming on to be. It was going to be Mahomes and Watson in some of these AFC championships. We really thought that. And he just, again, obviously missing some time because of what happened and what he did, rightfully so, but then has not only not found his footing, has continued to get injured and not look like the player he once was. If you could sell me on this is a Daniel Jones level contract where there's no more guaranteed money after the back of this, I would feel a lot better about it. Just again, as strictly a player contract structure.
Yep.
However, if there's a world where, again, in a vacuum, he becomes the player he was at the end of his Texans run, he was a top 5 to 7 quarterback.
Yep.
I just thought we were going to be that player again, with especially, and the thing, besides all of the, maybe this is consistent with his personality. The inability of the coaching staff and him to get on the same injured or not. maybe is indicative of his character. You know, he was a guy coming out of college that did a lot of Habitat for Humanity. Was somebody that Clemson adored and loved, and was loved in the community, and was
Right.
seen as such a leader.
Have
And had this very
same thing in Houston, man. Until those allegations came out, everybody in Houston loved him.
And and beat me to the punch on that. Exactly right. But then that was all a lie. And then he continues to either um, be disingenuous with the trainers and coaching staff that he's working with in Cleveland, who have, by the way, like Nick Chubb has come back from two should have been career-ending injuries, and well, maybe not the ACL, but the knee he had. He's already squatting 600, 700 pounds. Obviously, what they're doing in Cleveland is working.
Yep.
You got the Cleveland Clinic out there. Like, you have some of the best medical advice you can get, and to just not be able to get on the same page as your coach, who, again, like, maybe Stefanski got strong-armed into doing this, but like, for them to be inconsistent on what his health is, it's consistently, if at best it is poor communication, which you don't want from your quarterback anyway. At worst, it is deceptive, which you absolutely cannot have at any level of a team environment.
Right.
So I address the play stuff. He doesn't look like himself. He doesn't have the arm zip. He doesn't look like he can really run the fancy offense. There's so many personality questions at this point. I can't get behind this pick, and I don't think I could. I don't think anybody should have him on his team, even on just a play perspective right now. For the cost it has, you can't do it.
I was gonna say, is there even a world? Is there even a world right now where, again, we have to keep saying in a vacuum, character, all that stuff. If you could somehow erase those character concerns, let's just look at play. Could you even argue he's a top 40 quarterback in the NFL right now with his play? Because we're looking at 40 teams. Yeah. With his play, can he start for one of the 40?
Are we starting Malik Willis? Then yes.
I mean, here's my issue though. Malik Willis you don't have all the, like, part of play is your communication with your team. Yeah. There is a true part of me. I'm one of those people that bought into Deshaun Watson pre all this stuff. You heard my takes on it. Mm-hmm. I adored Deshaun Watson prior to all this happening, right? Yep. And I thought the world of Deshaun Watson, and thought truly, when he is on, he is the second best quarterback in the NFL. When he was on, he was a game changer. Yep. And he would just, that play in Seattle early on in his career shows you everything you need to know about early Deshaun Watson, right?
Made Will Fuller look like a real player.
Right? and to see where he went from there to the point where early Deshaun Watson not only looks like he is in love with the game and will die for the game. He does not care. He will die for the game. He will die for the win. Yep. To now in Cleveland, this looks like the ultimate. His agent said, this is your only chance to ever make money ever again.
Yes.
You're going to take this contract whether you want to be in Cleveland or not, because you are a legitimate NFL cancer that has to be cut out, and someone's dumb enough to think that you're not.
Right.
And that communications issue you brought up, that to me just seems like I don't want to play. Yeah. My life is over as I know it. I'm just going to take my money and go somewhere else.
And there's nothing, you have no incentives in the and again, like you would hope, again, as someone who, still works a little bit in athletics and things like that, you would hope that you would, especially at this level, right? This is the 1% of the 1%. You always want to be better, right? You can always be better. Right. You always are trying to find that edge. And for some people, they love winning, they hate losing. They're just driven to be successful. Some people it is money. Some people's like, incentives that I want to hit, and they're in my contracts. Kyler Murray not playing Call of Duty, little things like that. Especially when they're young and just kind of learning how the game works. At the next level, when you're not just the best athlete anymore, you're not the Heisman Trophy, you just out athlete everybody. But maybe you're right. Maybe Deshaun is just, I get $63 million next year or this year, regardless of what I do. And why work harder? Why do more? So I think it's a valid point. Outside the one that we haven't already addressed. and again, not trying to just continue to shit on the guy who's working on his boards and has so many other things going on in his
Yeah.
life, and appreciate him being on it, but like far and away the worst pick, like far, far and away the worst pick in this draft.
Right. I think as soon as he made that pick and then we started talking about it, he's like, "Oh fuck." I was doing questions for boards and just making a football. It felt a little like fantasy football-ish when you're in those end rounds and you're like, "Oh, that guy's still available, take him." Without thinking of like all the reason why that guy was still on the board. And you're just like, "Oh, he's still there. I'm taking him." Not thinking about, "Oh, wait, he was injured for the past 2 years and this is just over-evaluation based on name." I do have a free agent to at least kind of consider here. You're looking at a really expensive team. Deebo Samuel is going to have to get paid to be on this team.
Yeah.
Leonard Floyd, even if he's a situational pass rusher, is going to dictate money because situational pass rushers always dictate money. Plus, you have that big Deshaun Watson contract. And you're going to need a lot of help.
Yep.
But you're going to need to do it not necessarily at bargain bin prices, but you got to be smart. I could see them trying to take a swing at Patrick McCarry, the tackle from Baltimore. Younger player at 27. He makes about $6 million. You can probably get him at the 7 or 8 range in a year's time. I don't think McCarry's like a game changer, but it's a functional tackle that can help keep Deshaun Watson upright and really just keep making a functional team around. This is it. You're stuck with that contract for what, at least 2 more years. This contract runs through 2026. So Deshaun Watson's your starter, whether you like it or not, for 2 years.
Or at least on your team.
Yeah, and he's on your team for 2 years. And by that, even expansion teams have a tendency of they get the best old head they can find.
Yep.
An old head in the NFL does not allow a quarterback to be paid $60 million and not be the starter of the team, even if they think it's bad. They just go, no, we're paying him. He has to play. Yep. We have to see it. So I would go McCarry there because it's salary cap driven, but also functional play.
Yeah. Yeah. The only other one I again, just kind of trying to find some cheaper options here on this team. You have a lot of, again, quick manufactured touches on offense in terms of just like get the ball out quick, do that kind of stuff. Best version of Deshaun was not that guy. I just made but he did like his deep shots. He liked to play deep. DJ Chark is going to be 28. I think this is going on 29. Has shown the ability to get deep. Has on multiple teams, the Jaguars and the Lions, which are, were not phenomenal teams when he was playing there, but could still win with speed, with route running. I think it's a veteran who everywhere he's been, people have liked him. Maybe that's something you need a little bit more of on this team.
Yep.
But the ability to win deep has had years where his yards per route run is over 2, which is kind of the metric you want for good wide receiver play or elite wide receiver play. Don't know that he's always been able to do that at 28, but 28 is not a deal breaker age. Someone you're not going to pay a ton of money for, who has shown the ability to get deep, which maybe another year with a healthy shoulder, Deshaun can get back into some of that rhythm and someone who can stretch the field for you a little bit. Even if you're not going to give him the ball, to just not have, these possession these Deebo and Devin Singletary, 5-yard crossers, so he can at least keep the safeties on it.
Right, I was going to say that's a really nice compliment if you have to make Deebo functional with a lot of touches in his career. That's not a bad option. I don't know where else to really go with Munich, so we'll just move on to Oklahoma City because it's always it's going to be in this fictitious scenario of 40 teams. Munich has now picked up the talking point of the last 3 years of the NFL, so that's really all that's ever going to be said about them.
Exposure, right? Exposure.
All
news is good news.
Mm-hmm. All right, and now we're going to move to my second team. Ironically enough, the only one to not get an international team is the second one. The Oklahoma City Twisters here, and we are going to see how Oklahoma City did with this one. So, first pick, I went with someone that's dealt with a lot of chaos and has always been productive, Jonathan Allen at the defensive tackles position. Came up with Jamel Dean at corner for the second one. We're trying to be competitive, so we signed Geno Smith as our quarterback. Then you have Jadeveon Clowney. We need 8 sacks. We'll get 8 sacks because it's Jadeveon Clowney. Functional wide receiver, Jacoby Myers with the 5th pick. And then you saw me. I threw my hands up for that last one. It just said, fuck it. But I wanted a try-hard player that was going to be tough and be a culture pick. So I took Alex Anzalone as my interior linebacker, who I thought could work with a Clowney and Allen around him. So It's a more defensive heavy team than I thought I was ever going to draft. I know I always go offense first,
Yeah,
which is ironic because now I've been doing defensive first a lot more recently. But
yeah, yeah,
your big
yeah.
thing was Geno. He's too good.
Yeah,
He's too good for the spot I'm in.
yeah, yes, for sure, and especially getting him where you got him. I think the rest of us, and this is more just philosophical of the expansion draft, and we touched on this a little bit, was to stay away from a quarterback who can steal too many wins. I think this is a team, at least on the surface, that is very much like we do want to try to win a couple games right now.
Yep.
We do want to try to make a wild card push because again, the formatting with 40 teams may open up some more wild card spots. Maybe we have an opportunity to get in here and maybe steal a game here and there and be competitive. Maybe 7 wins gets us in. Maybe it's like where you're going to go 7-8-1 and have Carolina make the playoffs. Geno Smith, revitalized career. I would love to see, we do those documentaries, what happened in New York and just the opportunities and both stops. I mean, obviously you didn't do great with the Giants either. But then just the change and maybe again we talked, Tyler Lockett, sort of in his prime, a little bit maybe fast, but then getting DK Metcalf, who was just an absolute athletic freak, and just maybe not feeling any pressure, maybe the ability to just be himself, change who he was. But like one of the best layered throwers at the NFL, crossing routes in that 10 to 20 range, just dropping unbelievable pinpoint passes that we never saw from him at the NFL level. We saw in West Virginia. We certainly saw some of that in that wide open gun offense. In terms of being able to get the ball down the field. But again, such an open gun concept, we didn't think he would translate that, and he couldn't for a while. But a guy who, again, I would say was in terms of quarterbacks available, head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest talking point is that he fell because philosophically you were the only team. I'm sorry, this team was the only team who wanted that.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting, sort of groupthink from the rest of us. Love Jamel Dean talked about he's a fighter at the point of attack. Catch point. Jonathan Allen, love him to death. Talked about the only thing I had with him was the center shoulder issue. Clowney's Clowney. I think he nailed on the head. He's going to be, loves to hit, loves to play, loves to stack and shed at this point in his career too. Myers is, rock steady. Going to be somebody who's going to be there for you, give you, 8 for 61 and steal a touchdown occasionally roughly every game as an average. Yep. Something that you want. And you talked about, that pick just kind of being I think you can run around and hit people.
Very much so.
Maybe more talented players on the board, but I get it. And I would say the first, if we move on from that, I think every player that this team drafted comes in and has impact right away without a ton of questions, which I think is the only team that has that. Like, especially if you go through the first, 5 rounds, and like, they've all done stuff at the NFL level. Not every team can say that for their first five picks. So I think philosophically, while maybe there's not you said you like to go offense, you want more defense. I think the structure of this was who is the most now ready player in terms of like who can I plug in and like I know I can get production out of at a certain level. And I think this team did a nice job of that, and I think took advantage of the board falling to you in a certain way where maybe we didn't want that. And by we, I mean the rest of the people drafting. Right. But you nailed those picks when you got those opportunities. So again, I'm kind of projecting in terms of what was your actual draft process, but that's what it kind of looks like from the outside looking in.
It was damn close to that. It was damn close to that because I
just go ahead.
It was certainly something where we brought up the point. This team gets the first pick in an expansion draft. That means they're picking 8 in the NFL draft. It's no man's land at quarterback. And at 8, you're looking at maybe the number 1 receivers on the board if you're lucky. Which, in the most recent drafts, that's not true. Especially, look at this year. You're down to receiver. I would sneak in with Rome Odunze if this was last year's draft, which I'd be extremely happy to get Rome Odunze.
Yeah, that's a good 9 pick.
But there's not many times that the third receiver on the board is worth Rome Odunze level, right? Plus, Rome Odunze also comes with great character, great team leader aspects. Like he's a corner. It's the biggest thing about Rome that scares me as a Packer fan is beyond the fact that he's a tough son bitch that's a great receiver. He's going to be a great team guy there for 15 years. if he has a good career and they take care of him. At least 10 to 12 if he holds up. So that's something that sucks. But you're picking 8, and you're in a division with Seattle, Arizona, San Francisco, and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You have an aging Matt Stafford and a roster that, outside of the few stars they have left, it's a lot of we took shots, and some of the shots paid off and some did not in Los Angeles. Arizona we're still figuring out what Arizona really is under Gannon. They looked really good and competitive, not like world breaker, but they looked competitively very good at the end of the year once Kyler was back. And Seattle, we don't know what's going to be Mike McDaniel because we're leaving an entire era of Seahawks history behind with the loss of Pete Carroll. So I shouldn't say the loss as if he died, as in getting rid of Pete Carroll as their coach, right? So
continue the guard.
So really, outside of San Francisco, we have 3 teams that we could at least argue if we're competitive, we could do something with. And it's the only American team in this draft, which means your market isn't, let's just be the best of 5. Or, you guys are that nice team from Canada or that nice team from Mexico. It's like, no, you have to play with the big boys in the States, and you have to win over a fan base that is successful with the Sooners. And Oklahoma State, at least, is kind of interesting every 5 years. So, that's a fan base you have to win over. So I was like, okay, this is a team I got to compete with. And if I were you with Monterey, I don't know if I would have taken Geno. I may have taken Geno, early on and said, I'm going to get a good guy to make sure I make him sit and learn, because I truly do believe in the Green Bay philosophy of making everybody sit to make sure they're good. But yeah, it was competition right away. Right. I mean, that's the big thing is it's the diamond, it's the horse apiece of I'm making sure they're good by sitting them. Well, how do you know if they're good if they're sitting? Well, I'm making sure that they're in the oven, just like they're coming out of the oven. It's fine.
I know.
But it's certainly a team that it's compete now. Which why my targets, we already talked about Chris Godwin, so I'll stick away from Chris Godwin. I think couple players that I would be very interested in, because we have a more defensive team, is either I think free agency has to be at this point either do you want to go strength on strength and just hope your offense can be competitive with what you can make of it, or do you try to balance it? I personally would take shots at a few players, not seeing if we're going to get all of them. But if I'm going to go the strength on strength option, I want to get Budda Baker on this team immediately.
That was my first pick for this team.
Was great. You have Jamel Dean, you have Jonathan Allen, you have Clowney, and you can have Anzalone as a good captain in the middle and he's a good communicator as well. So if you can get Budda Baker back there also as a communicator to just fuck shit up, that was the thought.
He's a great communicator, great speed, can play at all 3 levels, can fill the hole. He also significantly weakens a division of, like, if Arizona loses Budda Baker, that's 2 for 1. Obviously he's been vocally frustrated before. I don't know. It seems Gannon has calmed some of that down, which I didn't think he could do. But certainly the noise around Arizona right now is that we're bought in with whatever Gannon's selling. Which good for them for drinking the Kool-Aid. But Budda Baker's an elite level safety. He's top, I would say, 5 in the league.
Yep.
To take that from a division opponent is also just icing on top. So that was honestly my first pick for them. So a similar thought process there.
And then I'm just gonna throw some names out there just to get the idea out.
Yeah.
I need to protect Geno, so I'd be looking at Ronnie Stanley or Jedrick Wills.
Yeah.
And then I love
if Ronnie Stanley's healthy, he's awesome. He's just always hurt.
Right. So it's kind of like the 3. I'm looking at a triangle here. Budda Baker's the obvious, and then my second point in my triangle is I need a left tackle, so I'm going Ronnie Stanley or Jedrick Wills, and then my third one is I want to bolster the strength of this defense even more. I'm gonna try to find a young rotational player to just maybe get another 8 sacks. So I'm going to go Chase Young or Marcus Davenport alongside Clowney with Jonathan Allen. Just be like, okay, let's get let's get those guys that we can pay $8 million, $9 million to now, and just make a team out of those guys and just say they're young. If they're healthy, they're going to be productive. Are they going to be world beaters? No.
Yeah.
But with Clowney, maybe we can get, especially if you got all three of those players and Jonathan Allen, you could probably at least get 20 sacks out of that group. So you're like, okay, we can do that.
And Allen's had some history with Chase, young, and you would hope that if you can get, again, another one who's just like has not had the career due to the injuries, but rookie of the year, ton of forced fumbles too as a sack artist early on. You can get some of that out of him, injuries, but production from him at that level would be great. The other one I thought was, again, just another wide receiver might be a good fit if you're trying to win now. The guy's been consistent as hell his whole career, a good, solid wide receiver at all three levels. I think makes a lot of sense.
So who was that? I'm sorry, I got you cut off.
Amari Cooper or Deontay Johnson.
Yep.
I think both make sense. Johnson's a little younger. Not young, but again, under 30, which even if you're building it, you kind of want to keep your receivers in that neighborhood. But Amari Cooper's been nothing but consistent his entire career. So just having another reliable receiver, I think it certainly helped the team as well.
Yeah. I think the triangle that you're looking for is, can I protect Geno, can I rush the passer, and can I get an impact player? And then at 8, if you're lucky, you pick another receiver up, and then you have a 1-2 punch. If not, or you go rotational pass rusher again, or maybe your tackle's there. That we saw this year. It was a tackle heavy draft. Now next year it's a defensive heavy draft. Is there even a good tackle prospect at this point for next year? Usually we at least have a year on these tackles to kind of be like, oh yeah, they're like Penei Sewell. We knew a year ahead of time. Penei Sewell was the guy.
Well, I think Sewell we knew from stepping on the field on day one. I'm going to be very honest. I haven't really looked at the tackle class a lot.
Yeah.
I don't have a name off the top of my head for you at the moment. But there's certainly nobody, to your point, there's nobody that with the Penei Sewell level of ability. Again, that's not saying much. There's a lot. I don't see even like the other one you can know is like that class with Wills, Thomas, and Wirfs. You could watch Wirfs play in space and kind of know that like, hey, this is an elite mover. This is a guy who, man, you let him run back here, and he's running with, he's running with the running back at 340 pounds, and you knew he was going to be. You watch Andrew Thomas in pass protection, a little longer, but like had unbelievable feet for his size and a great punch. And again, in full transparency, because of how many tackles there were in this class that were going to go high, I didn't have a chance to like look at second level or third level next year guys. But I'm sure somebody will come out of the muck, come out and kind of establish themselves as that tackle. The kid from is pretty good.
Yeah.
That's obviously something I'm blanking on the name right now, but Georgia continues to be, where they're just pumping out offensive linemen. So don't have anybody, but to your point, I don't see a tackle with the Penei Sewell, Wirfs, Thomas kind of I'm hype at this point.
Right. So that's where you go, I may get one of these younger guys at the edge position, and then I'm going to go try to find one in this draft. Yeah. And I got Baker.
Thing, just to touch base on is everybody coming into this year thought Fashanu was pretty much tackle 1. It was Joe Alt and him kind of 1-2. A lot of people have Fashanu at 1, and he was tackle 3 off the board there. So you never really know. Preseason hype is always weird. So just don't want to get too far ahead of yourself either.
Right. But it's certainly something to think about, because that is the other thing that a lot of fans do not understand, how often teams go, I could have this now, or I could have theoretically better next year. I'll just wait till next year. And
which is why draft picks are so valuable to begin with, compared to like NBA or any other sport. You just don't see the return for draft picks that you do in other. I mean, sorry, the NFL compensation is always so. You see, the one Randy Moss traded for a 4th.
Right.
Coming from Oakland to New England. Obviously, traded for a 1 and a linebacker, originally, but you just don't see the return on some of those. So, unless you're Jamal, 2 1s for a mid-level safety, but whatever.
Right. We'll move on from Oklahoma City, because I think the best point about Oklahoma City is they're going to try to be competitive immediately. So
for sure.
We're going to our final team. I know you hate this GM a lot.
Yep. Yeah. Terrible team.
We're going over to the Toronto Pioneers and their expansion drafted team here. this was, God, Derek did such a boomer bust draft for both teams. First pick was my boy Christian Watson at wide receiver.
Yeah.
He himself said this, which is why I'm bringing it up. Darius Slay was a panic pick, but he picked Darius Slay at the corner spot. And then for a draft head, kind of redeemed himself with CD So. DeAndre Swift at the 4. He wanted to make a guy who wasn't going to steal a lot of games like Geno, so he went with Gardner Minshew, and just took a good veteran leader in CJ Mosley at his 6. So he got a more concrete towards the end, but he took swings early on players.
You're taking swings. Mosley missed an entire season 2 years ago. Right. I mean, he's not somebody that's been like the epitome of health and been there either. I don't understand the philosophy. It to your point, like, you know, so much hit or miss, but like you also have, it's either young and unproven or old and past their prime or injury prone. There's no, I don't have much to go off of here other than like, yeah, Christian Watson's got some potential. Slay can maybe play corner. Sal's done some solid stuff. Like, he's not he was the only player left offensive line wise, and that had played snaps. So I get that.
Yeah.
In terms of you've seen live action, snaps from him. Took a homer pick. He loves all the Georgia players, but we obviously know what Swift is at this point. Right. Rotational player. Has had an injury history of his own. Gardner, he's fun. He can kind of right the ship for a little bit, keep you in that 7-8 wins area. And then Mosley, again, from a leadership perspective, fine, but again, missed an entire with a heavy contract. I just don't see the philosophy here. Like, I don't think it was best player available. I don't think there's a synergy here of, I'm going to go one way or the other. It feels like he's trying to be a little competitive at some spots and not so much in the other. So I know that's not super insightful.
It's the truth, though. It's the truth.
Yeah. I think every other team had a little bit better philosophy that we can kind of track. I don't get this one, and I really struggle with an identity for this team that needs one if you're going to be an expansion. And maybe this is a team that maybe that was his goal. Maybe he's like, I'm going to tank this out. We're going to get the first pick in 2 years, and we'll kind of hit the restart button again and just kind of be the real expansion team.
Right. So. The thing is, he has the second pick in the draft, so he's looking at possibly getting a quarterback, which then does give you some identity. Not necessarily a ton, but if you don't hit on that pick, the interesting thing for me is the most obvious productive player is DeAndre Swift and Gardner Minshew, and if that's your most obvious 2 picks at offense, it's. Now, Christian Watson on the field is far more productive than those guys. Christian Watson can't stay on the field, which is why I ultimately said, as a GM of the Packers having to make the people that were available, Christian Watson would be odd man out. Now, that hurts me because when Christian Watson plays, Green Bay is even better than what they look like without him, which is still damn good, right? So here's where I almost want to kind of continue the theme of throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
I have an idea that's fucking wild. Is Toronto a team that takes on the great mystery of Trey Lance? He's young. He's young, and he can throw deep. And he played with Christian Watson. Can you just say fuck it and say, I don't know, let's take him on, and maybe we'll be fun at the very least, so Toronto has something to root for, and it's 2 guys that are used to at least that climate, that's used to that division. Even if Lance hasn't played in that division, he grew up in Minnesota, grew up and then played in North Dakota. Like, do they take the great what if at Trey Lance? And then maybe if they don't love a quarterback, they could be a team that finds value in drafting. That could be a thought process for me. A second one for me as well is if we just need to get them some players. I think a player that you could get on a decent contract to at least help you could be like a Devon Godshaw at defensive tackle. to at least just get you something that could be worthwhile. Because I don't think even this team has enough to really be like, we can attract these guys. Where at least every other team has one or two pieces to go, hey man, like we're worth coming to. Try us
Yeah.
out. I don't think Toronto really has that. So it's like take those guys that maybe will take a little extra cheddar to go that way, maybe like a Devon Godshaw. But that's all I can really think of right now.
Yeah, I can tell you if Derek is the GM of this team, there is not a snowball's chance in hell. Was Derek's least favorite quarterback I think he's ever watched. Just not his cup of tea.
I can understand that. Can easily
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, he was not, but he was also felt the way about Christian Watson. So maybe if he's willing to take another look at it. I had a similar thought in terms of just like trying to either figure something out or take another player. I thought Javon Kinlaw might be a one who needs a fresh start here, who you're not going to sign a ton of money to.
Right.
Young, he's somebody that I think has potential. I think it was a little bit of a reach in terms of San Francisco trying to just plug. Similar to what the Titans used to do and just plug and play the same position and assume you're going to get the same level of production. Obviously he's not that same level of player as an Armstead is, but the other one that I looked at, maybe like a Tre'Davious White, an older player who, has had injury history but has a successful past. Again, I'm throwing things to the wall here. They're two players that one young, older with a little bit more established play. He's not quite as old at corner as Slay is. Obviously, I'm looking at the wrong team. I'm sorry. Not quite as old as a corner. No, I'm at the right team. Not quite as Slay is. And then obviously with Kinlaw being very young, I think needs to change the scenery. Needs to really be a true 3 tech and not be asked to like hold the point of attack the way he's been asked. And I think maybe the Jets get that from him with Quinnen playing a different spot. But I think it's those are two players that I think in terms of the almost chaos theory roster here that makes some sense in there.
I did just see another one if we really just want to try to be fun. I will say it was fun getting Derek in conversation, both after the show and during it. He's one of the only ones I was thinking like market. We're trying to sell tickets. We're trying to do this. Another one that could maybe help. If you already have speed, what helps speed? More speed.
Yeah.
Marquise Brown's available in this roster.
Yep.
Go just say fuck it. We're gonna have the two of the fastest guys we can find, and we're just gonna chuck it. Now, is Gardner Minshew the guy that's gonna chuck it? No. But
could is also available Justin Fields, and we're just gonna be fast everywhere. Who apparently, which I'm not overly surprised with, is beating out Russell Wilson for the 1 spot right now. That's all the reports coming out of camp.
Who would have thought? Who would have fucking thought?
Kenny Pickett's also supposedly going to get cut before Eagles camp's done.
Told you. I told Kenny Pickett's trash, and I told everybody.
Listen, I was on that bandwagon too.
I know. I'm sorry. I didn't want to make it look as though you were pro Kenny Pickett.
No, I understand.
But my absolute what the fuck were like. He was on my do not draft list.
Yeah.
You know how hard it is to be on that? Like, if you would have said you have to take Kenny Pickett, I was like, I'll take a 3rd or 4th round flyer on the kid.
Right.
I don't know. He's got starting experience. Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But first round you're out of your fucking mind. I would have gladly taken Malik Willis over Kenny Pickett.
Pickett got too cute. They wanted the kid in their backyard. They thought they knew more than anyone else. They just didn't.
Right. No, that's pretty good evaluation of all 8 teams. We'll do a tinier conversation since we've done a lot of good evaluation here and done a lot of good theory. Quick answer here. What team do you think can be most competitive right away with what they have?
I would probably lean Oklahoma. Just let me double check this real quick. I'd say Oklahoma, maybe Birmingham if you get stability from Tyrod and those pieces that we talked about. Those are the two with the quarterbacks I think I trust the most,
right?
Which is kind of I think the answer to the question. So those would be the two out of the gate. I think it is again. I think Monterey, if you can draft even a solid, at least solid in his rookie year, hopefully you're getting better. But with that offense running back, you could be successful there. I just don't have that piece now, so I would say, probably Oklahoma at 1, Birmingham at 2, just because, like again, some of those other picks at Penning and just doesn't have the offensive line that you would kind of hope to have there for what you kind of need. But I would say those would be my top two in terms of being competitive right away.
Right, I would say those. I do think Monterey is the big key. If Monterey gets a quarterback in the draft that you like, I think Monterey is the obvious number one choice. It just sucks because of the division that they're in. Whereas just players on that team that we can see, I think Oklahoma City is the team. I could also see, honestly, given health, I could see Barcelona being worthwhile.
Yeah.
And that. Now, the second question here is, who's the most fun team, do you think?
I know this seems silly. Can we define fun?
Fun as they don't necessarily win, but at least you enjoy watching the game.
I would say Dusseldorf. I think makes some sense.
Yep.
Being big and beefy up front, hitting people, blocking up, letting Malik Willis run around. I think they're a lot of fun. Again, no bias there, just as the one who drafted. Maybe no. I think that's what I'm going to stick with, and maybe Toronto if like just the crazy inconsistencies between position groups, just being like, yeah, we're going to have the number one pass defense and turn the ball over 6 times a game.
Right.
I don't know. So maybe just in terms of, and that's what I meant by define fun.
Yeah.
We're just looking for chaos theory, which I know is one of your favorite things.
Oh yeah. Love me some chaos.
Yeah, or is it I think that hey, there's a lot of fun stuff happening around everything except maybe the quarterback being elite, but that quarterback play is just basically backyard scramble every play where we're taking 2.7 seconds to throw the ball or run off or take a 20-yard sack.
Right.
Those would probably be my top two.
No, I think that's the fun of the exercise, is to see where you're going, and that really leads us into kind of how we're going to finish today. Is how does expansion really affect the league? Number one, we'll start with play, and we're already seeing the issues in the draft of the quarterback position. How does expansion to 40 do you see affecting the quarterback position as is in the NFL?
Wow, that's a heavy question.
I can start with some parts to help you out here.
I can kind of give you my gut reaction. I think it's going to, one of two things are going to happen. Either it is going to create a real middle class of quarterback, which is, you're not going to be paying, the 28th best quarterback market level. Maybe you're not even paying the 18th best quarterback market. Maybe it does really create this bracket of, there's a top, and it's 40. Maybe maybe you're 10. The top 10 are really an elite bracket where you kind of maybe have 1 and 2, whoever they are, Mahomes or Allen or whoever you want to put there, as their own little separate sect in there. Obviously, Mahomes should be his own, but Mahomes has kind of shown us that he's going to take pay cuts to make sure the team around him continues to be viable.
Right.
That's what made Brady great, I think, for a long time and made his career longer, which if Mahomes is already doing that, where every other team's in trouble 10 more, 15 more years. Maybe there is that 11 to 20 or 11 to 16. That's another section, and then you kind of continue to bracket down, what it's going to be, and then, maybe that makes the rookie pay scale not as important of a thing.
Yeah.
Like there are some players that like maybe you don't have to move on from as hard and feel like it's a hard rookie. The other thing is it may go the opposite with how many in the entire world, how many people can really back up. We're already seeing maybe, if we're talking, Mahomes is, I think we got to almost remove Mahomes from size just he is. But in terms of you get Mahomes out of the way, Allen, I think, is a step below him, but still has a chance to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, if he continues to, he's got to win. He's got to show he's got to beat Mahomes once, I think.
He's got to do it at least once.
Yeah, and then win the Super Bowl, I think, in that year, and show that was a real thing. But it has, production-wise, the things he's done, just unbelievable, but not quite what Mahomes is. But if you're talking like truly elite talents, 4, 5, and then you maybe get 7 or 8 other guys who can be above that. And now you're spreading that instead of 32, there's 8 more teams that got to find quarterbacks who can play at a high level. Maybe it drives up the top of the market even harder. Maybe you're having to overpay for, again, you're Uh, I don't think the supply goes up of elite level quarterbacks because you're adding teams. So maybe pressure on that market makes quarterbacks even more valuable. Coming out of the root there, and then again, maybe you do get a shift in terms of we talked a little bit earlier about the zig and zag. If like, hey, I talked about it when I had to play Mahomes. With one of my teams there where it's like, hey, I'm not going to get a quarterback who can hang with Mahomes or a defense. I'm going to run the ball. I'm going to have time of possession of 39 minutes every game. I'm going to have two that I can rotate in. I'm going to nail you with, let's use Derrick Henry again. I don't have Derrick Henry, but give Derrick Henry the ball 20 times in the first three quarters, and then you're going to have to deal with running after Pollard after you've been beat to hell for the entire game. And that's how I'm going to try to win, because I can't afford the elite quarterback unless I nail the draft, which again will then make that rookie scale even more important.
Right.
Or B, again, the question that you come into is again, we talked about kind of option one, which is like, does it create different sections of quarterbacks? That's at any position. Or that's two, does the expansion and the higher need for more players either make those positions more expensive, pass rusher, corner, edge, the things that you're already paying.
Right.
I think there's also a small world. I don't know this, and I think the NFL would probably have better data on this. But if you expand into Europe and you expand into some of these other countries, do they start to take American football more seriously? Do we start to see developmental camps? Do we start to see some of these European colleges maybe rotate away, not fully from rugby, but maybe these rugby stars who find a little more money in the NFL, in the NFL contracts, want to do that. And again, the great thing about rugby that maybe the NFL should adopt is learning to tackle without pads keeps your head out. And it's something that I think the NFL really should look into, at least from coaching at a young age, of how to tackle properly without CTE, concussion, neck injuries.
Right.
You want to get out of the game. That's the easy answer. Not easy answer, but an answer to kind of make that running. So again, maybe some of these rugby guys who have transitioned from great rugby players to tackles like Jordan Mailata and that, and Hody Nada. Hody Nada was an elite rugby player, learned how to play a bit, was an all-pro, nose and defensive tackle. So do we see if a rise in popularity, trends there? Do we see more Europeans start to play a little bit more? And then do we get, maybe not in year 1, 2, or 3, but year maybe if the popularity continues to grow, do we get a new grassroots program? Do we get maybe the Irish, the Gaelic Athletic Association, which is one of the founders of the sport of rugby? Does Ireland start to produce some? Do you start to see a little bit different growth patterns in terms of what you're gonna get? And then that pool helps keep the cost down a little bit. But again, that goes to Derek's point of do you see that happening? So those are just sort of a couple of the quick thoughts on the market in terms of players themselves.
I think
how
it's.
building.
I think that it drives the tippy top up, where if you can argue you're a top 5 quarterback, which isn't exactly true, but the way market works, the top 10 guys can argue. I think you might be in play. I think one of the things that may force, I think it's a double-edged sword here. I think in some years you would see like, oh my god, that guy got paid, because it's just you're in a war for talent. You got to pay for that talent. And then I think there's other years where you just go, a player says, well, someone will pay me, and you just say, I know there's logical options out there, so yeah, fine, let someone else pay you, because we're not going to be the ones to do it. I think it's more of the, in a perfect world, a 40 team NFL, in terms of the quarterback market and the play, I think no matter what, I think it's a positive, because it then puts more of the emphasis on the total team, because you can't rely on the quarterback to get you in and out of the spot. You can't, unless you get the diamond that is Patrick Mahomes. Right. You cannot play we got Pat, so we're fine.
Right.
Even Buffalo, they're seeing it right now. They keep trying to do we got Josh, so we're going to win. That's not how it works.
Right.
There is, it's a one of one guy that can do that. So you're going to have to play against those kinds of things. And I think the best thing that could happen is this is going to elongate guys' careers in both a quarterback market and a general populace, where if you're still athletic enough and you can outbeat half the league in some athletic trait, in some worthwhile, you can have a much longer career, and it's going to be good for guys there. The only thing I think that's really positive on a quarterback thing is with so many teams as options and you needing to foster the best talent possible, I think that does I think it not totally, but cuts a little bit of the sense of urgency off of he's not the guy, get rid of him right away with these younger quarterbacks.
Okay.
I like this is just a name. It's not me fighting for my opinion that was proven completely wrong, right? If you looked at a guy like, say, Zach Wilson, who has the athletic tools, not the full on brain, but if you look at the tools,
sorry, sure.
Not because it's Zach Wilson, but if you look at those guys that have those tools, can you say, hey, we have to invest to make sure we have guys, so we're going to make sure your ass sits for a while because we need this to pay off, versus the modern NFL has turned into you get a year or two and you're done. And if you don't show it, you're gone. Where, like, we don't live in the NFL back in the day where you got Terry Bradshaw wasn't an effective quarterback until year 5.
Ever.
And I understand our statistics in our other chats privately have said Terry Bradshaw may have never been a great quarterback, but he wasn't a really good positive influence on the Steelers until year 5.
Yeah.
There's a 40-team league where you can't just find a unicorn. You have to build a unicorn. Does that allow you to go, this guy's got physical tools, he doesn't have the mental, or he has the mental, but he's still maturing into those physical tools? Like, you don't have the pressure to get Trey Lance on the field because of a giant trade immediately if you also have to go, fuck, he has to work. Where San Francisco, another problem with that one was, we have a great team, so we're going to make him work no matter what because it's a great team. So I think that could be a general positive for the quarterback market there. And maybe you could avoid a situation where, even as much as I love him, there's still slight scary thoughts of, hey, Jordan Love's played half a good year.
Yeah.
He's getting $55 million a year. Do I think it's worth it? Yes. But it'd be nice to be able to say, if you think you can get paid better elsewhere and be better situation, maybe not. But, if you take 45 and give us 10 extra $1 million a year on the cap that we can use to help you, maybe this is the way we keep you in Green Bay for 15 years and not 3. So that's kind of where I look at those things. It's an interesting market of the quarterback. I think quarterback's obviously the number one position that's affected by this. Outside of more players means more guys stay along. I think you see a lot of like Joe Flacco stick around longer because they can get paid.
They can get paid. The other one I would just say is there's just a limited pool of human beings who are 6'5", 330 pounds and can move in a certain manner.
Yep.
And you don't just need one of them per team. I'm talking obviously at offensive line at this point. You need probably 8.
3, 8
to 10, and you're going to add 8 teams, so you need 80 more humans that are that big and can do that. I don't think the offensive line or even some of the defensive tackle markets. Again, edge too, obviously, but just in terms of edge is always going to be high. Those things, but like in terms of just physical humans who can meet the size and physical moving requirements is why I kind of went to that rugby sort of thing. If you don't increase the pool of players or humans that are just interested in the sport of NFL football, I don't know how the offensive line market doesn't explode. And I'm more looking at guards and centers who are just going to become so much more valuable. They're already undervalued a certain percentage, but I think that just the lack of the stress of 8 more rosters to be filled. Again, with the limits of just human growth. How many people can you find that are there? Even King Dunlap, right? And that's a fun name, but massive human who can just get. The earliest Mims is who were just like, you have the frame to be able to play this. And again, you've been very limited, but like taking you in the first round because the frame is so special, and he's special even for offensive lineman build, right? I just don't know how you're going to continue to find people side at that level, and again, knowing how important it is, I think that'll be an interesting take. Just real quick, just we were talking about quarterback contracts. We already know the 3 at the top, 45. Do you know who 4 and 5 are in terms of the top quarterbacks getting paid right now on an average per year salary?
An average per year salary?
Yeah, 4 and 5. Because we talked about the three that are getting 55. Burrow, Love, and Lawrence.
I say we have Burrow, Love, and Lawrence. Does Deshaun still sneak into that just because the stupid guaranteers is average 45 now?
His average is 46 right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh. Just trying to think of who got paid.
Yeah, and again, some of this is recency. One of it's not, which I didn't realize how backloaded this contract was.
Oh. I have no goddamn clue, man.
Tua is fourth.
Right now, yeah, because he's 52. Is Jalen Hurts on that list?
He's 53-1. Jared Goff is fifth right now.
Woo!
At 53 flat. Herbert is 52.5. Jackson's 52 flat. Then Hurts at 51. And then there's a pretty big drop off. Kyler going 46 after that.
Kyler looks like a fucking deal.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about is again, just you're always going to be playing catch up. You always want to set the bar for the next guy. It is interesting to me that both, Love and Lawrence, Love's contract's different. Like the guarantees and that would make it a much more valuable contract. But in terms of average salary, Lawrence being later didn't beat Joe Burrows. We talked about that comp earlier. Right. But if the reason those two names, because we both, I think, believe pretty thoroughly that Tua and Goff are successful because of the teams around them, right? And the coaching staff that they specifically have.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have to pay that level of quarterback that money, something's got to break. Either those guys get paid continually more because they're successful, or again, to your point, does a Jared Goff now only command $30 million on a $380 million cap? Just to see some of these quarterbacks again, you're forcing the market because you just again, does that team building change, or and the effect that will have on the quarterback market? Again, those are two quarterbacks that I would not think you would rank 4 and 5 in the NFL in terms of, right?
No.
And you notice we didn't mention a Mahomes there. We didn't mention a Josh Allen in that either. So these are players who are clearly a middle class quarterback, I would say, to be fair.
Yep.
I would argue, maybe below, in that, 16, 17, 18 range.
I think when I did it, I had Goff. This is more, I said this in the reflection as well. This was more a reflection of where the quarterback play was this year. This past year, Jared Goff was a top 10 quarterback. That doesn't mean the play, he doesn't mean he himself is a top 10 quarterback. The play this year was that, right? But I think I was being kind when I put Tua around the 15 mark because I couldn't argue the success over some of the other guys in that area. But to me, Tua's a do not pay ever kind of guy. Yeah. I've made that very clear on the past couple episodes of the show, and it's a great point to say where it's gonna take maybe 2 more years of guys like that getting paid until someone finally. Florio says it best. It's gonna finally take a guy to say no. Miami had the chance. Miami was the best one where they easily could have said no, and they were stupid and they did it.
Right.
And I think they just signed their death warrant for the next 5 years because I think the second Tyreek Hill loses his speed, that team's over.
Yeah.
And he's going to be fast for the rest of his life, let's be honest, but not Tyreek Hill level fast.
And Tua doesn't have a void year until 2029. So
are you fucking kidding me?
No, I'm looking at over the cap right now. His void year is 2029. Same as Jared Goff. It's almost the same contract as Goff with $20 more million guaranteed. I'm sorry.
Oh my god, I wouldn't want to be in Miami's position at all.
Tua had a much larger signing bonus. Goff's extension is like $3 million more, but Tua had a much larger signing bonus. But the void year doesn't kick in until 2029. I don't have the full breakdown of the contract, so maybe there's some Daniel Jones-ish things in there. But again, for that to be the case, again, and like you again, to your point, like, okay, we pay Tyreek Hill now $90 million. Jalen Waddle, I think, can sort of be 80% of Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
But I don't think he can get to the point where he can be the takeover player that he is. But yeah, I don't know how the market has to. You're right. To your point, has to pick one way or the other. So.
Now we've been getting into market and other stuff, but how does expansion affect both the league and a fan? Is this good for a fan if we go to 40 teams? Is this good for obviously for the league? It's great. More teams, more games, more money. you know, and international exposure. That's obvious,
Right.
but does it water down the product? That's the question for the league perspective.
That's the real question, right? Because NFL Europe tried that once, and again, I think we're running back to just the pool of humans who can play football at an elite level. Um, and I don't know. I honestly I know it's not a great guess. I would say the product gets a little watered down.
Yep.
But again, if you keep again, especially divisions that get added to the NFL continental United States leagues, like the European League, maybe can kind of carry its own. Maybe that's something that can sort of keep it competitive. But again, adding this level of expansion, I think, to existing leagues in the NFL is going to be tough. I also think you have to, you're obviously going to expand the weeks. Obviously, we talked about that too. I think how you manage your buys is going to be important, especially with less just humans to play the sport. If you're not keeping people healthy, and I hope we didn't discuss the bargaining, but hopefully you would hope that the NFL, and I think this is going to happen anyway when eventually goes to 18, you got to get 2 to 3 bye weeks, and they have to be spaced out where it makes sense. Like, again, not to, but I think the Ravens have 3 games in 10 days this year, which is how, why, what are you doing? I know the NFL is just about making money. Like, how do you expect them to be able to be functional? Like, that's that. Like, I don't know who they're playing in that third schedule memorized yet, but I want to. That's the game I want to play because they're going to be so beat up they're not going to be able to function.
Right.
You can't do that.
It's certainly something to think about.
And that's certainly, less so than even like the competitive balance is the NFL has to watch this in general. If you are going to ask teams to play, there's another team, and I have to double check. I don't know who it is off the top of my head. There's another team. It might be the Giants. I don't think it is, but I know there's a team that has another essentially 3 games in 10 days, just coming like into the holiday season. Those teams are not. You just can't. You're going to get somebody so injured and just worn down that you're playing backups, and then that game is just starters. I can't imagine that your body can recover at that 2 games in 10 games. 2 games in 10 days is too much. 3 is unconscionable in my opinion. So how you build the schedule, I think, is going to be really, really. And if NFL does care about player safety, which I think at some points they do. I think the lawsuit kind of made them CTE and concussions because they changed the kickoff. They're like, we're changing the helmets, but that was strictly we're losing money because of all these lawsuits change. And if they're going to continue to get good contracts from TVs to play all these games, something the NFL Players Association hopefully can bargain for them and be like, hey, we can't play more than 18 weeks, make it a 24-week season. We'll rotate it 2 to 3 buys per team. But otherwise, it's again harping on that. But the Ravens again have 3 games, 10 days is. I don't wish anyone to get injured, but I hope to the least extent they can, it shows the decline in play for those 3 games, and the NFL makes a change.
Right. I think here's another thing that I wanted to touch on the bye week a lot here. We're going to 18 games. That's abundantly clear. The players should just the players should just be on top of this with the players union and just say you need to kind of go like you said about Kyle Shanahan's offense. You need to attack that first and say, okay, you want 18 games. Well, we're dictating the terms of how you're going to get to 18 games. The thing I always think about, if this were to happen with expansion, you have to make this as friendly to all 3 components of the game as possible. You need to make it friendly to the players, you need to make it friendly to the league, and you need to make it friendly to the fans. Right? People want to see high quality games, but people also want to make sure that they get to see their players play. Nothing is more disheartening than when you lose your quarterback or when you lose your star player and you can't do anything, right? So to me, one of the things to do is simple mathematics here. If you go to a 40-team league instead of 32, you don't need to go to 18 or even 17 games. Cut the 17th and go back to 16. And many people would say, "What? That's crazy. That's crazy. You're cutting revenue." But you're not. So you have, all right, half of 32 is 16. They each play 17 games. It's 272 games in a season. Right. You go to 20 teams, or you go 40, so you're going 20 times 16. 320, dude. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hit the equal sign before I did that one, just so the people can see it.
Who can say it? Yeah.
320.
Right.
So automatically you're getting almost 50 extra games than even if you went with just the 17 game season.
Right.
But play that window as if it were an 18 game season. So you put it automatically 2 buys in, and what I would do is regulate it. I don't understand why they don't do this more often. I understand it may suck for television providers. So that might be the only answer to my real question is instead of having these giant ass windows where the bye week could be, have your first bye week can only take place between weeks 5 and 9, right? And then your second bye week can only take place between week 12 and 16. Whatever the case may be. Because then that way you just go, like, you can schedule the games whenever you want to. You don't have to say, well, we can't do this because of this, or we can't take some of the games out of a single week and you could almost say, like, it's NFC North rest week. These teams aren't playing. And just go, okay, everyone's got a rest, then we're all on equal playing field in the division. And then the second bye week, we can do different times. And then that way you could also manage your European, because another thing I would say in a European division is it'd be really smart for those teams to have a U.S. base to go to and to stay here for a couple weeks when they're stateside. So they kind of do a stateside tour, they do a bye week, they go back to Europe, they come back, they do another stateside tour, they have bye week, they go back to Europe, they finish it up. Playoffs, you add a bye week in there, and you can get to President's Day, and you can still have time. And then if people want to say, like, oh, we have to fly overseas for a playoff game, it's like, it's the fucking playoffs, dude. Figure it out. It's best of best football, best team wins. You have to figure it out. But then that
makes sense. That's I didn't really think of it. Obviously, you put a lot of thought into that, and I think that makes a ton of sense, especially for player safety. I think the other thing, depending on where the incorporation of each team lies, you may have to deal with some things that workers' rights and workers' comp things that the United States really doesn't have to deal with and like that. So I think that's something that, again, I don't want to get too into labor laws because I don't know.
Right.
But there's certainly some differences in expectation for healthcare and things of that nature being in the EU. So some other questions you just have to keep in the back of our head as we kind of continue to manage these European teams.
Certainly would make sure if it's higher standards in the EU. Canada too. Certainly it forces the league to go up if that is the case. So which would be good. But I think this is a really fun exercise, and that actually concludes this expansion draft series that has been almost a year in the making. Brandon has seen almost every single detail work that I've done on this thing.
Absolutely.
Back to, hey, we have 2 hours to kill on Thanksgiving. What do you do? Hey, I did this entire expansion draft. Look at all these things that I did.
It has been an incredible effort, and to watch this thing come to life has been a ton of fun. I've been in the wake here, and I was fortunate enough to kind of come in at the end when most of the hard work is done, and the amount of time and effort and thought you put into this has made this experience not just entertaining and fun, but really feel almost tangible, and that's hard to do in a situation like this. So I really commend the effort and the time and the things you've done to make this series not only fun to listen to, but fun to be a part of. And obviously, this is not something I do a ton of in terms of my day-to-day life. So this has been, and I know Derek and the same way. So the undertaking and the effort is certainly behind the scenes work has not gone unnoticed. So congratulations on finishing what is a massive project that you should be incredibly proud of.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. And it's always the goal. I can't stand when Big Brother hears what I'm saying to somebody and then magically I get a YouTube feed. What if the NFL expanded to 40 teams and it's a 30? It's no disrespect to another creator. I'm not shitting on another creator. But I can't stand when I see like a 30-minute video and that's like, it's just like, oh, you have to think about this, you have to think of this, and that's it. I'm like, no. You have to think about player safety. Like, you have to bring up labor law ideas. You have to think about, you can't just say, well, where's a cool place to put a team? It's like, yeah, I'd love to put a team in fucking Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or Madison, Wisconsin, and say, we're fine. Right. We can do it. Like, oh, I want to put one in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, because I like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Like, That's not how it works.
Correct.
You need to have statistics, you need to have financial information, you have to have all this stuff. There's a reason that St. Louis doesn't have a team anymore.
Right.
Because they have to do that process.
Right.
And so I think it's a disservice to a viewer or a listener to not do those things, but I certainly appreciate the fact that it has not gone
Yeah.
unnoticed within my circle of people
Yeah.
to do this
And
project.
I think the other part of and the depth and the analysis and the total I want to say package. I'm lacking the phrase that I really want, but um, obviously, like we're running up. I tried to be under 3 hours in this one, but it doesn't look.
We're getting
But
damn
um,
close.
the that level of depth is certainly the 30-minute video you're looking for a specific clientele, and the 3 hour long form you're also looking for a different clientele.
Right.
Uh, so I think that's also something to be considered. Is a um, the people who have the passion that I think you have in the sport, and obviously I love the NFL as well. Those are the people you're looking for, and maybe there aren't as that mountain gets a little thinner at the top in terms of how many people are going to listen to that level or care about that level, right? And again, you kind of talk a 30-minute video. We could have done this in 15 minutes. We could have been like, yeah, this many teams, less players, more bodies, draft is okay. Deshaun Watson sucks. Moving on.
Yeah, we
But
could
there
have
you
done
go.
it, and it wouldn't have been us at all because we need to
No,
get into the weeds.
no. And I think it's important to I think a lot of the other thing is a lot of those spaces are already taken, right? A lot of those spaces, there's enough creators who can do it in 20 minutes. I don't think there's people who can have, basically what sounds like a fireside chat, right? And be like, a real tableside conversation that I think, um, I hope people enjoy. I hope people, still enjoy this, in a world where, we can get YouTube shorts or TikTok videos that are 15, 16, 17 seconds. And that's a perfectly, if that is what you love, please do that. And I'm not being critical of, old timer kids these days can't pay attention being that, but I do think there's some value to filling the other side and to
Right.
being a little more in depth, a little bit more well rounded. I guess would be maybe a fair thing in terms of the entire process. Um, and I think you've done a really nice job filling a specific niche, which again maybe at times leads to less viewers getting to the full end of it. But I think the ones who do listen truly enjoy it, and it's something that they don't have a lot of access to. Which again, um, in today's world with those shorter attention spans and just the way that data is kind of or media is kind of consumed, this does fill a unique spot, and I think it's great. I think it's cool, and I think it has its place, and again, it might take some time to get the footing 100% and get off the ground, which is hard with anything that's a new undertaking. But this is going to be something that I
Indeed.
think,
In
yeah,
fucking
yeah, I
indeed,
know.
yes.
And but again, you could, and I don't want to get too preachy here, but like you could sell your soul a little bit, and again, we could do it in 20 minutes, man. If you said we're doing this in 20 minutes, I would need more prep time, and I would just be like, and we'll get it
Well,
done.
just think about what
Uh,
happens when I can finally get you for draft season, or
yeah,
when
that's
you finally have that random weekend during the year where you're like, I have
yeah,
no event, I have nothing
yeah,
to do, let's talk football, and
yeah,
because I think the biggest thing for me is a podcast that is done well has been a game changer in my life to understand things I want to care about. Like you've heard me say
sure,
this 1,000 times. I can talk about anything for roughly 30 seconds to a minute if I talk out of my ass. But if you
sure,
ask me about the 7 or 8 things I actually give a shit about, I won't stop talking until you tell me to. And it's
right,
because I love it and it's a passion. And when
sure,
you want to truly understand something like a good podcast can give you, that's what happens. Like that's the reason why when a podcast dies, you're kind of like, "Oh, that
yeah,
sucks," because it impacts your day. It's not your function of a day, not just, "Oh, I don't have my 45 minutes today." It's like, "No, that affects my
right,
drive to work
right,
every day of the week. This fucking
yeah,
sucks." Like, and that's
yeah,
where I don't want to be somebody that's just going to go, "Hey, I think that'd be cool." Like, yeah, that's fun. And I'm willing to do that, and there's nothing wrong with if you're that creator, but
yeah,
I'm here to
for sure.
I'm
So
I'm here
again,
to be enriched. So that's what
yeah,
it says.
well done. And again, I don't think you can have this level of undertaking and depth and overall care in your product if you don't feel that way. So and that shows in the final product. I mean, the I know it was AI, but even taking the time to make the logos alone shows a level of care, and that's what you want. So again, bravo.
AI is not as easy as people fucking think it is. You just put in sentences and you hope it works. And the first one I got, I was trying to do the Twister logo, and it was just literally like a mesh of paint, and I was just like, okay, we got to refine this process. And I sat there for like 4 hours refreshing pages, being like, this is the one, this is the one. So, but thank you, I do appreciate it.
Congratulations and well done, man. And again, it's been a fun ride.
So yeah. All right, well, that is going to do it for here for us. If you did like this and you're still with us, like, comment, subscribe for more. We appreciate it. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a review. That'd be really nice. And if you want to help us out even more, check out our socials, TikTok and Instagram, and head over to our Etsy shop, ptecreative.etsy.com. We're going to have new merch up for season pretty soon here, but you can still get that awesome Philly Dumpster Fire sticker because Philly sucks and we hate them. And boo.
The best sticker.
Boo, 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 boo. But go there, support us any way you can. Get ready for football season. I know we're all dying for it, which is why you're listening to this 3-hour podcast about NFL expansion. But peace, love, and hugs to you all. Thank you so much. Bye!